It is still dark when the first stirrings of life begin in the medieval castle. The air is cold, not the sharp cold of winter wind, but the stubborn chill that clings to thick stone walls before the sun can warm them. The castle sleeps in silence, but it's a silence full of breath, the slow rise and fall of slumbering guards in their tower bunks, the rustling of a dog stretching beside the hearth, and somewhere in the shadows, the soft coo of doves perched in the rafters. Then, a bell. It echoes slowly through the stone halls, not the frantic clanging of alarm, but the steady, dependable sound of morning. The castle is waking. A fortress, a home, a world. A medieval castle is not just one building, it is a collection of spaces, living, working, and defending, all built around a central purpose, protection. The outer walls are thick and high, often ringed with towers or a moat. Within them lie the bailey, the stables, the chapel, and the great hall. At the heart of it all stands the keep, the castle's central stronghold and tallest building, home to the lord and his family. The floors of the keep are layered like a cake. The lowest levels hold storage and cellars, cool and dark and earthy. Above them are the kitchens, where cooks will soon be stoking the fires. Then comes the great hall, the castle's social center, with long tables and a high ceiling, echoing with voices during mealtimes. And still higher, above the bustle, are the private chambers, the solar, where the lord and lady retreat, the chapel for daily prayers, and bedchambers lit only by narrow arrow-slit windows. Everything is stone and wood. No glass, not yet. Windows are closed with shutters, and walls are sometimes covered in tapestries to keep out the draft and bring in a little color. Floors are strewn with rushes, dried grasses that catch the dirt and are replaced regularly, though not as often as we might hope. And always, the air carries a quiet stillness, the sort born from thick walls and the weight of history. The first to wake, before the nobles stir, the servants begin. The chamberlain is up first, checking supplies and barking orders. The cooks are already at the bread ovens, mixing coarse flour with yeast and setting the loaves near the fire. It will take hours before they are ready. The smell of rising dough will slowly fill the kitchens and drift up toward the great hall. Stable hands lead horses from their stalls and begin brushing manes and muzzles. Armorers check weapons racks. Laundry women draw water from wells, still shivering in the morning cold. There is no electricity, of course, no taps, no clocks. The rhythm of the castle follows bells and sunlight, habit and hierarchy. Even now, as the sun begins to stain the horizon with pale orange, a young page is scurrying down a hallway, carrying a pitcher of water to the Lord's chamber. It is not warm, but it is fresh, and it is his job to bring it, no matter the hour or the season. The Lord's morning, high in the solar behind heavy curtains, the lord of the castle begins to stir. He is not a king, but he rules here. His word is law within these walls and across the surrounding lands. A few villages, perhaps, and miles of farmland that owe him taxes, labor, and loyalty. His day begins with a simple meal, maybe bread, perhaps cheese or porridge, and weak ale. Water is not always safe, so ale or watered-down wine is more common, even in the morning. His wife, the lady of the castle, joins him quietly. She is no mere decoration. She manages the household, keeps records, and often oversees the education of the younger children and the servants. After breaking his fast, the Lord may descend to the great hall to hear petitions. Local peasants may come to request justice or assistance. A dispute over a boundary, a broken cart, a stolen sheep. Everything here is personal. The Lord is judge, landlord, protector, and war leader all in one. He listens carefully, or appears to, while sipping from a wooden goblet. Inside the great hall. The great hall is the castle's heart. It's not as grand as fairy tales suggest, but it is the largest and busiest room. Long wooden tables, benches, and rush-covered floors. A high open ceiling with beams darkened by decades of smoke. At one end sits the dais, where the lord and lady dine slightly above the rest. A hearth or central fire pit glows warmly, necessary for both light and warmth in the windowless space. Here, meals are taken, feasts are held, and decisions are made. During winter, people gather around the fire, playing music or telling stories. In summer, the heavy heat gathers in the high rafters, and the scent of unwashed bodies lingers more than anyone would like. The smells and sounds of the day. Castles are not clean by modern standards. There are no bathrooms. Chamber pots are used at night and emptied into cesspits or moats. The air carries the scent of smoke, tallow candles, animals, and people. But there are pleasant smells too: baking bread, roasting meat, beeswax polish, and lavender in the rushes. The scent of horses from the stables is strong but familiar, not unpleasant to those who've grown up with it. Sounds travel differently in stone halls. Footsteps echo, voices bounce. Outside, the clang of blacksmith hammers rings rhythmically, forging horseshoes and repairing tools. Chickens cluck in the courtyard, and a dog barks now and then. Above all this, the bell chimes again, time for midday prayers. Work, play, and the passing hours. By midday, everyone is at work. Servants scrub floors, wash clothes, chop wood, or prepare food. The lady of the castle may be at her embroidery frame or reading from a religious manuscript. Pages and squires train in the courtyard, learning swordplay and horsemanship. Knights might ride out to patrol the surrounding lands. There is no real privacy. Doors are rare. Heavy curtains or wooden partitions divide spaces. Even the lord's chamber may be shared with squires or retainers. Children, both noble and servant, have chores. A noble boy may be learning Latin and heraldry. A servant girl might be collecting herbs with the healer. Everyone has a place, and that place is usually inherited. Mobility is rare. Hierarchy is everything. A meal together for some. In the late afternoon, the main meal is served for the lord and his family. This might include roasted meats, vegetables from the garden, and thick stew ladled over trenchers, flat pieces of stale bread that soak up sauce and are often given to the poor afterward. For the servants, meals are simpler: grain pottage, bread, onions, sometimes a bit of cheese. Everyone eats with fingers. Knives are shared. Forks are rare curiosities. Salt is precious, often kept under lock and key. There is talking, laughter, and occasionally song. A minstrel might perform. A jester, if the castle is wealthy enough to keep one, might tumble and joke in a corner. Outside the walls, the peasants in their thatched huts cook over open fires. Their lives are harder, lives the castle was built to protect and control. Dusk in the courtyard. As the sun begins to set, shadows stretch long across the courtyard. Chickens are herded back to their coops. Horses are fed and brushed. Sentries take their places on the walls. Torches and candles are lit. They flicker and dance, casting golden light on stone and wood. But they are expensive, so light is used sparingly. Most people rise and sleep with the sun. In the chapel, a priest chants evening prayers. His voice is soft, rhythmic, and slightly echoed by the carved stone walls. Faith is everywhere here, not just belief, but structure. The church defines the seasons, the weeks, the hours, even time itself. Nightfall in the keep. By nightfall, the castle slows. The lord and lady retire to their chamber. The fire is low. A servant stokes it before slipping away. In the guard tower, sentries yawn and settle in for their watch. A candle sputters in the corner. Somewhere, a dog barks at nothing. Sleep comes gradually. Pages curl up on straw mattresses. Knights remove their armor piece by piece. The kitchens go dark, save for the dying embers in the oven. Outside, an owl hoots, a distant wolf howls, and within these thick stone walls, the world feels far away. The castle may be made of stone and timber, but it is people who give it life. Each tower, chamber, and courtyard exists to serve a rhythm, not of machines, but of humans, from the highest lords to the lowest laborers. A medieval castle is more than a fortress. It is a community, a fragile society held together by custom, hierarchy, and hard work. Some carry swords, some carry buckets, but all play their part. The Lord Master of Land and Law. And law? He is not a king, but in these walls he holds absolute authority. The lord of a castle is often born into his role, inheriting land, title, and responsibility. His duties are heavy. He must manage crops, collect taxes, oversee justice, protect his people, and raise troops when summoned by his liege. In times of war, he becomes a general. In times of peace, he becomes a judge and landlord. He wears fine wool, often dyed deep red, green, or blue, expensive colors that reflect his rank. His cloak is clasped with metal, perhaps bronze or even silver. His hands are calloused, not from labor, but from hunting, training, and holding reins. He speaks French or Latin if he is Norman, or the local dialect if born in England or the continent. His voice carries weight. When he enters the great hall, people rise. When he speaks, others listen. But he is not free from duty. Even the most powerful lords owe loyalty to a greater power, a duke, a king, or the church. And behind closed doors, even he must bend to the subtler power of his wife, the lady of the castle. She moves with grace, not because she has time for leisure, but because she carries so much on her shoulders. The lady of the castle is no idle figure. She manages the estate when her husband is away, which is often. She oversees the household accounts, directs the staff, maintains food storage, and supervises the upbringing of noble children. She ensures that guests are fed, cloth is spun, and medicines are stocked. In her solar, the upper room of the keep, she may spend hours with spools of thread and letters from other noblewomen, conducting quiet diplomacy through careful words and stitched favors. She knows Latin prayers, herbal remedies, and family alliances. She also knows sorrow. Childbirth is dangerous, so is war, so is disease. Behind her calm expression lies the memory of names etched in prayers. Children, siblings, or parents lost too early. In winter, she wears layers of wool and fur. In summer, she walks slowly to avoid heat stroke. Her keys jingle softly at her belt, symbols of access and authority. Servants lower their eyes when she enters, but behind the curtain of formality, some adore her and others whisper. The steward and household officer. Beneath the lord and lady are layers of responsibility. The steward, or seneschal, manages the day-to-day operations of the castle. He is like a medieval CEO, overseeing agriculture, labor, accounts, and legal disputes. He can read and write, and he knows exactly how much grain is stored in the granary and how many chickens should be laying eggs this week. The marshal is in charge of horses and stables. The constable manages defense, the garrison, the gate, and the walls. The chamberlain oversees the private quarters and the valuables. The butler is not just a wine servant. He controls the buttery, the room where wine, ale, and provisions are stored. Each role comes with authority, but also risk. Mismanaged supplies, and people starve. Anger the Lord, and you are dismissed. Fail to prepare for an attack, and everyone pays. They walk with purpose. They speak in firm tones. They carry the castle's stability on their shoulders. Knights, warriors, and gentlemen. Clad in mail or plate, the knight is both soldier and symbol. Trained from youth, Nights begin as pages around age 7, running errands, learning manners, and watching older men train. At 14, they become squires, serving the knight directly. They learn swordsmanship, horsemanship, and the code of chivalry. By 21, they are dubbed knights, a ceremony both sacred and political. Knights defend the castle and lead troops in battle, but in peacetime they help enforce law, attend court, and represent their lord in tournaments. Jousting is not just sport, it's training for war and a display of status. They wear armor that can weigh over 50 pounds and ride horses bred for strength. But not all knights are rich. Some own land. Others serve wealthier lords for pay. Their lives are not easy. Battles are brutal, wounds are common, and fame is fleeting. Yet they are revered. Children admire them, songs are sung about them, and when they enter the great hall, all eyes turn. The castle guard, watchers in the dark. Not all warriors are knights. The castle guard, often called men-at-arms, are professional soldiers. They wear padded gambesons or chainmail and carry spears, swords, or crossbows. Some are former peasants. Others are trained fighters with no noble title. They take shifts on the wall, watch the gatehouse, patrol the outer grounds, and man the armory. Their life is one of repetition. Stand, walk, watch, rain, wind, cold. They endure it all. When alarm bells ring, they're the first to respond. In sieges, they fight on the walls. In peacetime, they drill, train, and sometimes quarrel among themselves. They sleep in bunks, eat simple food, and keep blades sharp. Their presence is constant, quiet, unseen, but essential. Servants, the castle's pulse. For every knight, there are 10 servants. They carry firewood, sweep the rushes, fetch water, and empty chamber pots. The castle's rhythms rely on them. Pages, young boys from noble or semi-noble families perform errands, open doors, and learn courtly behavior. Scullions scrub pots. Maids wash clothes by hand in freezing water. Grooms care for horses. Cooks tend hot fires from before dawn till late at night. Their hands are rough. Their backs ache. Their voices are rarely heard in the great hall unless summoned, but they hear everything. They see everything. In whispered conversations and exchanged glances, they piece together the castle's true story. Some were born in the castle, others were brought in. A few hope to rise to become head cook, master groom, or even steward, but most expect little change. Life is duty, repetition, and moments of quiet pride. A perfectly cleaned floor, a meal served on time, a fire kept burning all night. They live in narrow bunks, rise before the bells, and sleep after the candles are snuffed. They are the soul of the place, humble, often unseen, but indispensable. Craftsmen, the hidden hands. Inside the castle, and often just beyond its walls, live craftsmen and tradesmen who keep everything running. The blacksmith forges horseshoes, nails, tools, and weapons. His hammer rings from morning until night. The carpenter shapes beams, fixes doors, and mends wheels. The mason repairs stone walls, staircases, and chimneys. The tanner works leather, a smelly, difficult job. The fletcher makes arrows. The falconer trains birds for hunting. The herbalist gathers plants for medicine. These are skilled workers. Their knowledge is practical, passed down from father to son. They are respected in their own way, not noble, but necessary. Their days are shaped by seasons. In winter, work slows. In summer, it is constant. Some live within the outer bailey, others in nearby villages. They are paid in coin, goods, or protection. They may not dine in the great hall, but when the wall crumbles or the sword breaks, it is they who are called. Children, learning by living. Children are everywhere in the castle, giggling in corners, chasing chickens, peeking behind curtains. Noble children are taught Latin, manners, and religion. Boys learn hunting, riding, and swordplay. Girls are taught to read, spin, sing, and manage households. Play is simple: wooden toys, dice, tag, and storytelling. Servant children work early. A girl of 6 might feed chickens or sweep halls. A boy of 8 may help in the stables. There is little formal schooling. They learn by doing, watching, and listening. They sleep in shared spaces, eat what they're given, and grow quickly. By 12, many are already working full-time. Laughter echoes down corridors. A dropped apple, a clumsy curtsy, a whispered joke behind a door. Their innocence is fleeting, but it brings a softness to the castle's stone. The church within the walls. Most castles contain a chapel, small, stone, and solemn. The priest is not a noble, but he holds great influence. He leads daily prayers, conducts mass, hears confession, and blesses the harvest. He may also serve as a teacher and scribe, copying letters or keeping records. Religion shapes every part of castle life. Feasts, fasts, marriages, and mourning all pass through the church's hands. Candles flicker beside carved saints. Incense masks the scent of stone and damp wool. In the quiet of evening, as the sun sets and shadows stretch across the chapel floor, the people of the castle kneel and whisper ancient words seeking comfort, forgiveness, and peace. In this layered world of nobles and workers, prayers and weapons, the castle breathes with the rhythm of its people. Everyone has a place, and everyone depends on everyone else. Stone walls do not sleep. Even on the quietest night, the castle is watching. A flame flickers in the guard tower. Footsteps echo along the battlements. Somewhere in the dark, a dog growls low and then falls silent. Peace has settled for the evening, but it is a peace always earned, never taken for granted. The castle is more than a home. It is a shield, a symbol, and when needed, a weapon. It was built to withstand the worst of human nature, and to cradle the best of it. In this balance between war and peace, survival and celebration, the medieval castle became the beating heart of a whole way of life. Built for battle, strength in stone. To understand life in a castle, we must understand what it was built for. The castle is a response to chaos, to raiders, rival lords, and uncertain kings. In early medieval Europe, after the fall of the Roman Empire, authority fractured, roads were dangerous, towns shrank, law faded, and so people built walls. The earliest castles were wooden motte and bailey structures, a central tower on a hill, the motte, and a walled courtyard, the bailey below. But these were vulnerable to fire. By the 11th century, stone became the material of choice. Keeps rose tall and thick. Gatehouses were reinforced with drawbridges and portcullises. Arrow loops pierced the walls. Mutts were dug. Towers gave defenders line of sight in every direction. The architecture is not for beauty. Every feature is for survival. Spiral staircases twist to favor right-handed defenders. Narrow slits allow archers to shoot while staying protected. Murder holes above the gate drop stones or boiling oil. Parapets and crenellations shield defenders during attacks. The very design of the castle says, "We are ready," but readiness comes at a cost. Siege, life under threat. When a castle is under siege, normal life collapses. The gates are closed, the drawbridge is raised. No one enters, no one leaves. The people huddle within the walls. The lord's family, his soldiers, the servants, and often peasants from nearby villages who fled inside. Space is tight, resources are strained, fear is constant. Food becomes precious. Salted meat, dried beans, hard bread, and stored grain keep people alive. Water is drawn from deep wells or collected from rain. Fires must be controlled carefully. Too much smoke can reveal activity. Too little heat invites sickness. Disease spreads easily, waste builds up, tempers flare. Outside, the enemy waits. Sometimes they build siege engines, trebuchets, battering rams, and towers on wheels. Sometimes they just wait, hoping starvation will win where force cannot. Days blur into weeks, sometimes months. Defenders rotate shifts on the walls. Arrows fly back and forth. Occasionally a sally, a brief rush out from the gate, is attempted to disrupt enemy lines. Inside, people pray, children whisper, and each night the castle wonders, will the walls hold? Victory, surrender, and rebuilding. Not all sieges end in violence. Sometimes, the defenders hold out. The attackers, low on food or morale, retreat. Other times, the walls are breached and the castle falls. What happens next depends on who wins. Victorious lords may plunder the castle, or they may take control with little bloodshed, especially if the garrison surrenders early. In the worst cases, fire consumes the walls, and survivors flee into the countryside, but often life resumes surprisingly quickly. Damaged towers are rebuilt, broken gates are mended, the wounded are tended to by herbalists and priests. A new flag may fly over the battlements, but the routines return, fires rekindled, bread baked, floors swept. Even after war, the castle finds a way to breathe again. Tournaments, training in peace, violence in sport. In times of peace, the castle does not sit idle. Knights must still train, swords must still be sharpened. Enter the tournament, a mixture of sport, pageantry, and practical preparation. These events are not mere games. The melee, a massive mock battle between two sides, is chaotic, bruising, and often bloody. Jousting, though more stylized, is equally dangerous. Two armored men charging at full speed with lances, aiming for each other's shields or chests. Injuries are common, deaths are not unheard of. But the tournament is also celebration. The courtyard is filled with color. Flags flutter, trumpets sound, children cheer. Noble women watch from viewing balconies. Pages run errands. Merchants set up stalls. Poets recite heroic tales. A victorious knight earns prestige, and sometimes the favor of a noble lady. A disgraced knight rides home in silence, hoping to redeem himself another day. The castle comes alive, not with fear, but with ceremony. It remembers its purpose. It remembers its pride. Festivals, feasts, and the turning of the year. Life is not all war and labor. In between the battles and the harvests, the castle celebrates. The medieval calendar is shaped by the church. Saints' days, holy days, and feast days mark the seasons. At Christmas, the great hall is hung with evergreen branches. Roasted boar, spiced wine, and song fill the air. At Easter, bells ring out, and tables groan under the weight of food and ale. Weddings, christenings, and victories also spark celebrations. The great hall is swept, tapestries are hung, tables are covered with trenchers, fruits, nuts, pies, and meats. A minstrel might sing, a jester tumbles, dancers form circles around the hearth. Even the servants enjoy scraps and wine. For a few hours, roles soften, the cook is praised, the page receives a coin, the guard laughs with the maid. These moments, bright and fleeting, make castle life bearable. They remind everyone, highborn or low, that joy can still echo between stone walls. The castle at night. As darkness settles, a different rhythm takes over. Torches flicker in their sconces. Candles cast golden halos across wooden beams. The air grows still. Servants finish their tasks. Pages roll up blankets. Guards rotate their watches. The chapel hosts its final prayer of the day, Compline. The priest's voice is low and steady, offering peace to those who listen. Even those not present may whisper their own prayers by candlelight, asking for safety, health, or forgiveness. The hearth becomes the center of comfort. Families gather near it. Old stories are told of dragons, saints, and far-off lands. A mother hums as she braids her daughter's hair. A tired knight drinks mulled wine, staring into the flames. Sleep comes slowly. The wind moans softly outside the tower. An owl hoots in the distance. Somewhere, a door creaks. The thick walls cradle the silence. And within the castle, despite everything, there is a sense of safety. Seasons and shadows. Time in the castle is not marked by clocks, but by seasons. In spring, life returns. The air is damp with rain, and the fields outside the walls turn green. Flowers appear in the herb garden. Baby animals stumble through the stables. In summer, heat bakes the stone. The air smells of sweat and hay. The castle grows louder. More travelers, more trade, more tasks. Autumn brings harvest, the storage of grain, the drying of meat. Fires are kindled earlier. Cloaks are taken down from hooks. Winter is hardest. The cold seeps in. Wood must be rationed. Food thins. The world grows still. But winter also brings stories, closeness, and rest. Each season brings a new challenge and a new reason to endure. A castle remembered. Today, many castles are ruins. Stone walls crumble. Ivy crawls through old windows. Tourists walk paths once trod by knights, servants, and lords. But once, these were living places. They echoed with laughter, with commands, with the cries of newborns, and the songs of minstrels. They were cold, yes, cramped, smoky, and dangerous. But they were also places of safety, of family, of honor and hardship. Within these walls, people lived, people loved, people lost. And now as we drift toward sleep, we remember them, not as legends in books, but as real lives, layered in stone and time. The rooster crows before the sun. Its call echoes across the thatched rooftops of a small village nestled in the rolling hills of 14th century Europe. A soft mist clings to the earth. Dew glistens on the grass, and smoke begins to curl from the low stone chimneys, one by one. At first glance, it seems like any other morning. The baker kneads dough beside a warm oven. A child chases a chicken through the muddy path between cottages. A tired priest rubs sleep from his eyes and lights the altar candle for morning prayers. But something feels different. A silence lingers, heavy and uncertain, as if the world is holding its breath. Far to the south, across the sea, ships have docked in unfamiliar ports. Rats scurry down the ropes. Fleas jump from fur to cloth. Sailors cough, and no one thinks much of it. Not yet. But the wind carries stories. Whispers of a sickness that spreads without mercy. Of cities going silent. Of carts filled with the dead. Here, in this quiet village, no one knows what's coming. But the storm is already on its way. A village in the 14th century. The village is small, perhaps 50 people. Thatched roofs, wattle and daub walls, and narrow dirt paths connect the cottages. Chickens roam freely. Goats graze near the commons. A single wooden cross marks the edge of the churchyard. Most villagers are peasants, laborers who work the land in exchange for protection from the local lord. Their lives are hard but steady. Each season brings new work. Planting, tending, harvesting, storing. Wheat, barley, turnips. Some keep bees, others spin wool or thatch roofs. They rise with the sun and sleep when it sets. There is no electricity, no clocks. The rhythm of the day follows light, bells, and instinct. The air smells of wood smoke, livestock, and earth. Children laugh, dogs bark. A man sharpens his scythe. A woman carries a basket of herbs gathered at dawn. There is hunger in winter, sweat in summer, and always the quiet understanding that life is fragile, but it is a life they know, one that their ancestors lived, and that their children are expected to live in turn. That is, until the plague arrives. Signs and omens. Omens. In this world, illness is part of life. People fall ill often with fevers, coughs, wounds that won't heal. Medicine is a mix of herbs, prayer, and superstition. A priest blesses holy water. A wise woman offers a poultice of garlic or comfrey. A charm is tied to a child's wrist. Hope is placed in God's hands. But this new sickness feels different. First, it is spoken of only in rumors. A merchant passing through says he heard of a town where everyone died within days. A priest from another parish writes of whole monasteries falling silent. No names, no proof, just whispers. Then, real stories begin to trickle in. A traveling friar mentions bodies stacked outside city gates. He looks pale, worn. He coughs into his sleeve. Soon, even the most skeptical villagers begin to notice something in the air. Not a smell exactly, but a heaviness, a tension. Birds fly away in strange patterns. A dog refuses to enter the church. A cow stops giving milk. People begin to look for signs. A blood-red moon, a dead bird on the doorstep, a child who suddenly stops speaking. In a world shaped by faith and mystery, these things matter. They watch, they pray, they wait. Medicine, belief, and fear. In the 14th century, no one understands germs or bacteria. There are no microscopes, no antibiotics, no hospitals as we know them. Illness is explained by humors. 4 bodily fluids believed to govern health: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. A doctor might bleed a patient with leeches or recommend warm baths and cool herbs. The wealthy can afford more elaborate treatments, poultices, powders, even rare spices like saffron and cloves. But for most villagers, medicine is deeply tied to the spiritual. Sickness might be a punishment for sin, a test of faith, an imbalance in the stars. Some blame miasma, bad air. Others suspect witches, Jews, or foreigners. The priest preaches sermons on repentance. The wise woman buries herbs under thresholds. The villagers cling to whatever comfort they can find. And beneath it all, fear begins to grow, slow and creeping, like fog over the fields. The arrival. One day, a stranger arrives. He is pale, hunched, and wrapped tightly in a cloak. No one knows his name. He doesn't speak much. He sleeps in the stable behind the inn. By morning, he is dead. At first, no one panics. He was old, clearly ill. Perhaps it was just his time. The stable is cleaned. His few belongings are burned. The priest says a prayer and moves on. But within days, the innkeeper's daughter falls ill. She coughs violently, her skin flushed and hot. A dark swelling appears beneath her arm, a bubo, hard and painful. She vomits, she shakes, she dies. Then her mother, her brother, the boy who carried her water, the priest who buried her. Within a week, the village knows. This is not a passing sickness. This is something else. The Black Death has arrived. Panic and uncertainty. Fear spreads faster than the plague. People begin to avoid each other. Doors are bolted. Families hide inside. Meals are left on doorsteps for the sick, but no one dares knock. The church bell tolls too often. Graves are dug in haste. Some go unmarked. The priest, once a source of comfort, now coughs between prayers. He baptizes a child with trembling hands. He avoids funerals. A few villagers flee into the woods, to nearby towns, wherever they believe the air is safer. But the sickness follows them. They carry it unknowingly in the folds of their cloaks and the fur of their dogs. Neighbors stop speaking, eyes avert, suspicion grows. Some believe the water is cursed, others think the wind carries poison. A man covers his mouth with a cloth soaked in vinegar. A woman hangs herbs by her window and murmurs Latin words she barely understands. The village becomes quiet, not with peace, but with dread. Trying to understand, in the absence of answers, people turn to what they know. Some fast and pray. They whip themselves in the streets, flagellants, trying to atone for the world's sins. Others seek out scapegoats. Accusations rise, of witches, of travelers, of those who did not fall sick. Fear turns cruel. But in this little village, most people are too weary to accuse. They are too busy grieving, too busy surviving. The wise woman boils thyme and rue. The baker locks himself in his house and draws crosses on the walls. A mother burns her child's bedding after he dies. Tears silent on her cheeks. No one speaks of tomorrow, only of now. The sky grows still. By the end of the first month, half the village is gone. Fields lie untended. Bread goes unbaked. Livestock wander freely. The well is quiet. The church bell is silent. But strangely, the sky is still blue. The sun still rises. Birds still sing. In the face of such loss, the world feels indifferent, as if nature does not notice what is happening below. Those who remain begin to live hour by hour, a shared meal in silence, a clean floor, a whispered story before sleep, the tiniest acts of hope, repeated like rituals. And always, the question lingers, will this end? There is no pattern to it. The sickness does not follow reason. It strikes the old, the young, the pious, the sinful. It visits some homes and skips others. A child recovers. A strong man dies. A woman coughs for days and then walks again. Her husband falls ill and is buried by morning. No one understands it, and so everyone fears it. The name Black Death will not come until later. For now, it is just the pestilence, the great mortality, God's wrath. Whatever they call it, it spreads like fire. And in this small village, death has become a neighbor. The symptom, it starts with fever, fast and fierce. The body shakes, the skin burns. Then come the swellings, the buboes, dark, tender lumps in the armpits, neck and groin. Some are the size of eggs, others larger. They are hot, painful, and filled with foul-smelling fluid. The breath grows ragged. The limbs ache. Black blotches bloom across the skin. Internal bleeding, visible under the surface. The infected vomit. They grow delirious. Some cry out. Others fall silent, staring blankly at the wall until the end. Death comes within days, sometimes within hours. There is little time for goodbyes. No last words, just a long silence after the final breath. Burial in the dead. At first, funerals are held as they always were. The priest rings the bell. Neighbors gather. Prayers are whispered over the body. A wooden cross is placed in the churchyard. But the deaths multiply. The priest cannot keep up. He coughs during sermons. He trembles while lifting the holy chalice. Eventually, he vanishes into his cottage and does not come out. Now, burials are hurried. Graves are shallow. Sometimes multiple bodies are lowered into the same pit. The gravedigger stops saying names. Crosses are no longer carved. People weep quietly, then move on. Soon, the village must dig a trench, a plague pit. Bodies are wrapped in sheets or left bare. They are laid side by side, carefully at first, then hastily, then almost without looking. The smell is overwhelming. People tie herbs beneath their noses. They wear cloth soaked in vinegar or rosewater. Some say that music or bells can drive the sickness away. Others say silence is safer. The carts move through the streets, a wheelbarrow, a wagon, whatever can carry the dead. One creaks by in the moonlight. A dog howls. A child watches from a window, too young to understand, too old to forget. The isolation. The village is no longer a community. It is a map of locked doors and curtained windows. Neighbors no longer knock. Friends avoid eye contact. Even families separate themselves inside their own homes. Some people live alone, by choice or by loss. Others stay together, determined to share whatever fate comes. Meals are eaten in silence. Rooms are sealed off. A single sneeze causes panic. Parents sleep beside sick children, knowing they may fall ill by morning. Husbands and wives hold hands across thresholds, praying they won't lose one another. Even the church is silent. The priest's bell lies cold. The chapel doors are closed. Faith is still present, but it has changed. The church in crisis. In times of peace, the church guides the village. Baptisms, weddings, funerals, feast days, fasts. It shapes every hour, every season. Now it falters. Priests die. Monks lock the gates of their monasteries. Holy relics are carried through the streets, but the deaths continue. Some begin to wonder, has God turned away? Still, others pray harder. They walk barefoot in procession, flogging themselves with cords, begging forgiveness for the sins of the world. These flagellants draw crowds, chanting in Latin, weeping as they bleed. For a moment it feels like purpose, like an answer. But the sickness spares no one. It takes sinners and saints alike. Even the holy are afraid. Scapegoats and superstitions. In the absence of understanding, fear turns to blame. Not all villages do this, but some, especially in larger towns and cities, begin to suspect outsiders, foreigners, travelers, people who look or speak differently. Rumors spread that wells have been poisoned, that witches are cursing the land, that certain families are immune because of unholy powers. A man who hasn't fallen sick is accused. His door is marked. People shout. He disappears. These moments are rare in a village this small, where everyone knows everyone. But beyond the hills, in the cities, worse things are happening. Pogroms, burnings, trials with no justice. In times of terror, even the good can be cruel. Fleeing the village, some cannot bear to stay. A family packs what little they have, bread, a jug of ale, a blanket, and leaves under cover of night. They follow forest paths, avoiding roads, hoping to find safety in another town. Others are turned away at the gates. Guards refuse them entry. Villagers throw stones. "You bring death," they shout. A young woman walks for 3 days to reach her sister's cottage in the hills. When she arrives, she is too weak to speak. Her sister opens the door. She pauses, then embraces her. By morning, both are fevered. There is nowhere to run. The sickness is already everywhere. Moments of humanity. Moments amid the fear. There are still acts of kindness. A neighbor leaves food at a sick family's door, even knowing the risk. A boy sings to his sister as she sleeps, though her fever climbs. A midwife stays with a woman in labor, though she herself is weak. A man prays not for himself, but for the souls of the dead. He rings the church bell once more, though no one asked him to. These are not grand gestures, but they matter. In the quiet they shine. Even in despair, people reach for one another. The world falls silent. One morning, no birds sing. The sky is gray. The fields lie empty. The forge is cold. The market is abandoned. The village is not gone, but it is changed. Those who are left no longer count the dead. They count the living. There are so few now. They nod to one another as they pass, unsure what to say. Some speak softly to the animals, just to hear their own voices. A girl places a flower on her mother's grave. A man mends a fence. Life in its smallest form continues. But the silence lingers. Faith broken and reborn. In the weeks that follow, the priest's cottage door creaks open. He steps out slowly, thin and pale. His hands tremble. He carries a book. He sets it on the church steps. He does not speak. No one gathers. No sermon is held. But the next morning, someone leaves a candle beside the book. The morning after that, a flower, then a loaf of bread. Faith has not disappeared. It has simply changed shape. Now, it is not in grand cathedrals or Latin chants. It is in the smallest rituals. A whisper at bedtime, a meal shared, a hand held. Even when hope feels lost, it finds a way to return. The wind no longer smells of death. It carries the scent of soil turned for spring, of new grass pushing through the frost, of wood smoke and fresh bread. The silence has not vanished, but it has softened. Where there were only echoes and shadows, now there are footsteps, a hammer tapping, a baby's cry. The plague has passed. It has taken half the village, perhaps more, but it did not take everything. In the stillness left behind, life begins again. The count of the living. When the sickness finally fades, the survivors take stock. They do not speak of numbers. There are no censuses here, no records, but they know, in their hearts, how many are missing. The baker, the midwife, the boy who fed the chickens, the priest who once smiled at everyone he passed. Some cottages are empty, their doors hanging open. Some fields have gone to seed. The church bell has not rung in weeks, but people remain. And those people begin to gather, slowly, quietly. They nod, they share bread, they weep, they talk of the past, not in detail, but in glances and pauses. They sit by the well and watch the clouds drift by. The grief does not vanish, but it becomes something else, a thread that binds them, invisible but strong. Cleaning, mending, rebuilding. Survivors begin with small acts. They sweep out cottages, they scrub floors, they mend broken tools. A man rethatches a roof with slow, careful hands. A woman draws water from the well and pours it over the church steps. They bury the last of the dead. The pit is covered with clean earth. A cross is carved and placed at its head. No names, only a simple prayer scratched into the wood. Then the animals are rounded up, the gardens replanted, the fields turned. The world did not end, but it nearly did. And so, every task is done with reverence, not just to restore the village, but to honor those who can no longer help. Children of the plague. Many children are gone, but some remain wide-eyed, quiet, changed in ways they cannot yet express. They play again, eventually, at first near the cottage door, then in the village path, and finally by the river. Their games are different now, quieter, less wild, but still filled with life. A girl braids wildflowers into a wreath and places it on her friend's grave. A boy teaches his younger sister how to catch a frog. They do not speak of the sickness. They do not need to. They remember, in the way only children do, fully and without words. They are the village's future now, the village's memory. The land remains. The earth, indifferent to suffering, continues to provide. The wheat grows. The barley waves in the wind. The bees return to the hive. In the months after the plague, there is more food than people to eat it. For the first time in memory, there is enough. Bread for every table, milk for every child. The survivors are tired. Grief still clings to their shoulders, but they are fed, and with full bellies they can begin to dream. The land, though quiet, has not turned its back on them. It offers peace and promise. A new kind of faith. When the church doors open again, it is not for ceremony, but for comfort. The priest, thin but alive, begins to speak once more, not in sermons, but in conversations. He listens more than he lectures. He visits homes. He helps dig, cook, and carry. Faith has changed, but there are fewer rituals, fewer grand declarations, but there is more meaning. People light candles without asking why. They say prayers aloud to empty rooms. They forgive one another more easily. They laugh more cautiously. God, perhaps, did not send the plague, but God remained through it. The memory of ashes. No one forgets. Even as flowers bloom, as children laugh, as fields grow green, the memory remains. They remember the girl who braided herbs each morning, the man who whistled as he chopped wood, the couple who never left their cottage, even as the sickness entered their door. They remember how it felt to live through silence, how a simple knock, a loaf of bread left at the threshold, became acts of heroism. They carry these stories not in books, but in behavior, in kindness, in caution, in gratitude. Some speak of the plague only in hushed tones. Others never speak of it again. But none forget. New roles, new rhythms. With so many gone, roles shift. A woman becomes the new healer, having cared for the sick when no one else would. A young boy now leads the oxen, his hands blistered from the plow. A widowed man takes in 2 orphaned girls, braiding their hair each morning with slow, trembling fingers. The village reshapes itself not by plan, but by necessity. There is less hierarchy, less formality. Everyone has suffered. Everyone has survived. The walls between families blur. The lines of power soften. What matters now is not title, but presence. Not birthright, but contribution. Tales by firelight. As winter returns, the villagers gather around hearths. The fires crackle, shadows dance, and stories are told, some old, some new. They speak of saints and miracles, of ancestors and omens, and slowly they begin to speak of the plague, not as a monster, but as a memory. A child asks, "What was it like?" An old man replies, "Quiet, too quiet." Another adds, "But we were never alone." Laughter returns, songs return. The darkness is still there, but so is the light. The next spring, the snow melts, birds sing, the bees buzz once more in the fields. The village is smaller, but it is stronger. New friendships have formed, new skills have been learned. The people have changed, not just from loss, but from resilience. They do not know what the future holds, but they know this: they survived. And that survival is a kind of rebirth, legacy of the plague. In time, the Black Death will be remembered as one of the deadliest events in human history. But here in this small village, it is remembered not just in numbers, but in names, in quiet acts of love, in silent acts of courage, in the broom swept across the floor, in the soup shared with a neighbor, in the song hummed while hanging laundry. Life continues, and in its quiet continuation lies the greatest triumph of all. The first sound is not the trumpet. It's the grinding of iron on stone, a soldier sharpening his gladius in the dark. Then come the others, the crackling of the cooking fire, the bark of orders in Latin, the hooves of the cavalry trotting past the outer tents. Slowly, the Roman legion stirs. The sun has not yet cleared the horizon, but the day has already begun. Discipline is everything in the Roman army. Even in sleep, even in stillness, a legionary is a soldier first. Today, like every day, begins not with comfort, but with command. This is no game, no volunteer force. The Roman legion is the backbone of an empire. and life within it is a life of structure, strategy, and survival. Meet the legionary. He is not a boy, but not yet old, perhaps 24 years of age. His name might be Gaius, Marcus, or Quintus, a common name for a common man. He is not wealthy, he has no title, but he wears the armor of Rome. He has signed up or been conscripted for 25 years of service. 25, a lifetime. His pay is steady, though much of it is deducted for food, equipment, and lodging. But at the end, if he survives, he may be granted land, a pension, and Roman citizenship if he didn't already have it. He has been trained relentlessly. He can march 20 miles in full armor, build a camp in a day, fight with sword and javelin, and obey orders without hesitation. He sleeps in a tent with 7 other men, his contubernium. They are closer than brothers. These 8, they cook together, eat together, dig trenches together. If one dies, the others bury him. This is the legionary's world. Tight, demanding, exacting. The morning routine. The camp wakes before sunrise. First comes the bucina, the curved horn, its deep notes echoing across the lines of tents. The men rise. There is no snoozing, no sleeping in. A soldier who lingers risks punishment, a loss of pay, lashes, or worse. The tent flaps are pulled open. The men wash quickly with cold water from a shared basin. They dress in tunic and boots, strap on their armor, and report for the morning inspection. A centurion walks the lines. His vine stick is in hand, not just for show. The soldiers stand still, gear polished, weapons sharp. Dust on a breastplate might mean a beating. A loose sandal strap might mean running laps with full pack. Breakfast is simple: a bit of bread, some cheese or porridge, and water or watered-down wine. There is no time for luxury. There is only time for readiness. Then the orders come. Sometimes, pack up and march. Sometimes weapons training. Sometimes fortification duty or patrol. Always order. Always duty. Marching order. If it's a marching day, the camp is struck with military efficiency. Each soldier carries his pack, nearly 60 pounds, including rations, cookware, tools, and spare clothing. This burden has earned them the nickname Marius's Mules, after the general who first reorganized the army in the 2nd century BCE. The signifer carries the standard, the silver eagle, the soul of the legion. Losing it is the worst disgrace imaginable. The soldiers march in formation, not simply as travelers, but as a unit of war. Shields on backs, spears upright, helmets gleaming. They do not talk much. The road ahead may be long, and their feet blistered, but there is no room for complaint. A good legionary suffers silently. His pride is in endurance. After several hours, they may stop to build a new camp. Always the same pattern: ditch, rampart, palisade, gates at cardinal points, tents in rows, headquarters at the center. The camp is not just shelter, it is defense, a Roman fortress, built fresh every night. Even the ground under their feet is organized. When not on the move, if they remain in camp, the day is filled with training, sword drills, shield formations, marching practice, javelin throwing, wrestling, log lifting, siege equipment training. A Roman soldier is expected to be not just strong but lethal in coordination with 5,000 others. If they are stationed near enemy territory, patrols are constant, scouts report on movement, guards stand watch on rotation, cavalry ride perimeter checks. There is also construction duty. Legionaries dig ditches, build roads, erect forts, and even raise aqueducts. The army does not rely on laborers. The soldiers are the workforce. They are Rome's engineers as much as its weapons. The legions shape the very world they march across. Discipline and punishment. The Roman army is feared for its discipline, and rightly so. Minor infractions are met with beatings, extra duties, or deduction of pay. More serious offenses, desertion, cowardice, theft, bring harsher punishments, flogging, stoning, or even decimation, the execution of every 10th man in a disgraced unit. The centurion is judge, enforcer, and example. He is strict, battle-tested, and often more feared than any enemy. But he is also respected. He marches with his men. He eats the same food. He bleeds beside them. In this world, trust is built not on kindness, but on proven strength. Food and firelight. Dinner comes after sunset. A soldier's diet is basic but sustaining. Pulse. A barley porridge, occasionally enriched with meat or vegetables if available. Bread, dried fruit, olive oil, and vinegar wine are staples. Rations are measured and recorded. The men cook over shared fires. They joke, they sing, they argue, they tell stories of home, of mothers, of vineyards, of girls they may never see again. For a few hours, the camp feels almost human. Then, the night watch is posted. The others sleep on straw or cloaks, under leather tents, close, warm, alert. Sleep is light, muscles ache, but they do not complain. They are Rome. Before battle, there is silence. Not the peaceful kind. This silence hums with tension, the careful, practiced calm of men preparing for violence. Legionaries stand in formation, shoulders squared, eyes forward. Their breaths are steady, but their hearts beat hard under their breastplates. Each knows what may come. Each has drilled this moment thousands of times. But drills are not death. Today is not practice. The enemy in sight. Across the field, dust rises. The enemy is near. Gauls, Parthians, Germans, Britons, rebels, or raiders. Whoever they are, they stand across from the might of Rome. The Romans do not underestimate them. Their leaders have seen defeat before. The forests of Teutoburg, the revolts of Spartacus, even Rome bleeds, when arrogant. But today the legion is prepared. Each man stands with his scutum, a rectangular shield, his gladius, a short sword, two pila, throwing spears, and body armor of metal strips or chainmail. His helmet bears a plume or badge, showing rank and unit, sandals laced tight, muscles warm. The legatus, the commanding officer, rides ahead. He gives a short speech, not poetry, but purpose. Rome watches. Fight not just for survival, but for honor. The standard bearers raise the eagle. Trumpets blare. The formation begins to move. The Roman battle line. The Roman legion doesn't charge in chaos. It advances in order, a moving wall of shields and iron discipline. Men are arranged in cohorts, centuries, and maniples. Orders come not by shouting, but by signals, raised hands, horns, banners. Every soldier knows his place. The front lines are filled with the younger, more eager soldiers. Veterans anchor the flanks or support the rear. Behind them, the archers and auxiliaries prepare to strike. First, the pila are thrown. Heavy spears designed to pierce or bend, making enemy shields useless. Then the lines close. Now, it's the gladius. Short, deadly, designed for stabbing in tight quarters. Not slashing, not swinging, stabbing, brutal, efficient. The enemy might scream, the Romans do not. Their faces are set, their formation tight. The testudo tortoise formation may be called shields front, top, and sides, almost impenetrable. They push forward relentless. This is the Roman war machine. It does not hesitate. Inside the fray, in the thick of battle, the world becomes narrowed to inches. The clang of steel, the grunts of effort, the crack of wood, the wet thud of blade and flesh. The legionary's training takes over. He moves with his unit. He watches his centurion. He keeps his shield up. He stabs, retracts, advances. His left foot moves when his neighbor's does. His right arm acts without thinking. There is no room for fear, only survival. If he falls, the man behind him steps forward. If he breaks formation, others close the gap. The strength of Rome is not in the individual, it is in the unit. Victory or defeat. When the enemy line breaks, the Romans do not celebrate. They press. Only when the horn calls retreat or triumph do the legionaries pause. Only then do they take stock of wounds, lost friends, and breathless lungs. Victory is not always glorious. Often it is muddy, messy, and mournful. But when it comes, it is final. The enemy flees or is captured. The standard is raised. Prisoners are sorted. Loot is claimed under strict supervision. Rome does not tolerate chaos, even in success. If the day is lost, rare but not impossible, the retreat is harsh. Punishment may follow. Cowards are shamed. Units that fled may be decimated. Failure is remembered, but so is valor. Tending the wounded, the Medici, or army medics, move among the injured. They carry scalpels, forceps, cauterizing irons. Their medicine is limited but practical. They clean wounds, bind limbs, remove arrows. Pain relief is minimal. Perhaps wine, perhaps opium if available. The lucky will return to their tents. The less lucky will die by nightfall. There are no hospitals in the modern sense. A soldier's best chance of survival lies in cleanliness, comradeship, and sheer will. Even the best medics cannot do much if the gut is pierced or the chest opened. And so, the legionary learns to cherish small wounds, a cut, a bruise, a cracked rib. These are survivable. These mean another sunrise. Honors and rewards. After battle, rewards are granted, carefully, publicly. A corona civica, oak wreath for saving a comrade. A phalera metal disc for bravery. A promotion to centurion. A bonus of gold. The general might praise a unit, citing them in his dispatches to Rome. Sometimes the whole legion is honored with a title: Victrix, victorious, fidelis, loyal, invicta, unconquered. These honors are more than pride. They are legacy. They may win land, pensions, citizenship for sons. A legionary does not fight only for glory. He fights to be remembered. Evening after battle, as the sun sets, the camp smells of blood and sweat and dust. Soldiers sit quietly by the fire. Some sharpen weapons. Others mend tunics, wipe down armor, or clean dried blood from their sandals. A few drink. Carefully, discipline still applies. They eat in silence or with low voices, remembering who did not return. A helmet sits empty beside the fire. A cloak hangs without an owner. Later, the priests may sacrifice an animal in thanks. The augurs read signs in its entrails. For Rome, victory is not just earned, it is granted by the gods. Even the hardest legionary watches the flames and wonders, will the gods favor us again? Dreams and night watch. Sleep comes but slowly. Some men dream of home, vineyards, olive trees, the smell of their mother's kitchen. Others dream of battle again and again, the enemy's eyes, the sound of dying. Some do not dream at all. The watch changes every few hours. Men rise, shoulders stiff, and take their turn on the wall or by the gate. They peer into darkness, ears tuned for distant horns or whispers in the wind. Even after victory, a Roman camp does not relax fully. Peace is a temporary guest. Order must never sleep. When the dust settles, When the blood dries and when the last horn is silenced, the Roman legion does not vanish, it moves. Victory is followed by order, by inventory, by rebuilding, then by marching, always marching. For a legionary, the road is as familiar as the sword in his hand, the empire beneath his feet. The Roman Empire stretches thousands of miles from the deserts of Egypt to the forests of Germania, from the misty shores of Britannia to the sunlit coast of Hispania, and the Roman roads connect it all, straight, paved, and enduring. They cut through mountains, swamps, and wilderness. They are feats of engineering, not built for comfort, but for conquest. A legionary knows these roads well. His sandals have worn grooves in them. His shoulders have carried gear across hundreds of miles. Every bend is a memory. Every stone is a step closer to home, or deeper into foreign soil. The road is both promise and punishment. The marching life, a legion on the move, is a spectacle of precision. Each soldier carries his own load: rations, cooking tools, bedroll, extra sandals, stakes for building camp, nearly 60 pounds in total. The pack digs into his back, but he does not complain. They march in formation, ranks tight, pace steady, eyes forward. Centurions bark commands. The signifer carries the standard high. Trumpets signal direction changes, halts, or emergencies. The cavalry patrols the flanks. Scouts move ahead, eyes scanning for ambushes or broken bridges. The sun rises behind them. It arcs high overhead, then falls again, and still they march. Camps on the road. At the end of each day's march, a temporary camp is built, always in the same way. The men dig a ditch, raise an earthen wall, and place wooden stakes. Tents are pitched in rows. Gates are set at the 4 cardinal points. The command tent stands in the center. Every soldier knows exactly what to do. No instruction needed. The camp is built like a town, ready for siege or attack. Within hours, a small Roman city stands in the middle of nowhere, and just as quickly, it can vanish again. This routine becomes rhythm. The earth is carved with the repetition of empire. Moments of rest, Not every day brings battle. Some days bring stillness, a stream to bathe in, a letter from home, carried by courier, a moment to sow a tear in a tunic, polish a sword, or trim a callus from a tired foot. These are the days a legionary treasures, the quiet between storms. There is card playing, dice throwing, carving initials into the haft of a javelin, telling stories by firelight, singing old songs in cracked voices. Some speak of retirement, of farms waiting beyond the service, of land grants, wives, children, olive groves. Some dare not think that far ahead. Hope is a luxury, but it lives in small places. Encounters with locals. The empire is not only built with swords, it is built through negotiation, tribute, and trade. As the legion marches through villages and provinces, locals gather to watch, sometimes in awe, sometimes in fear. The legion is both protector and occupier. It brings peace, roads, markets, but also taxes, rules, and the shadow of Rome's will. A legionary may barter for honey, wine, or cloth. He may share a fire with a shepherd. He may fall in love with a local woman, start a quiet affair, or leave a child behind. These moments blur the lines between soldier and settler. The Roman army does not just conquer, it absorbs. The wounds that stay. Even in peace, a legionary carries reminders of war. A jagged scar on his forearm, a spear wound from a skirmish in Gaul, a bad knee that aches in the cold from a fall during a bridge crossing, a missing tooth, a burnt patch of skin, a tremor in his sleep. He remembers faces more than names. A comrade who shared his rations and died in a raid, a centurion who took a blade for him, a boy barely 17, screaming in his first and last battle. He doesn't always speak of them, but he carries them, in silence, with honor. The return to Rome, or not. Not all legionaries return to the city of Rome. Some are stationed in frontier towns for years. Germains stow Britannia. Others settle in the lands they once conquered, granted plots of farmland after their service ends. But Rome to them is more than a city. It is an idea, a mother that sent them out with a sword and asked them to bring back the world. If they do return to the city, grizzled, gray-haired, boots worn to nothing, they are sometimes greeted with a triumphal march. Often they arrive quietly, slipping into the crowd, watching the next generation take up arms. Their story ends where it began, among the people of the empire. Legacy and memory. The Roman legion is more than its men. It is a machine of history. Temples, aqueducts, roads, languages, customs, all carried on the backs of soldiers. A retired legionary may become a farmer, a merchant, even a magistrate. His children speak Latin, bathe in Roman baths, and write their names in Roman script. The soldier becomes a father. The warrior becomes a storyteller. The sword becomes a plow. But even decades later, when his hands are rough from vineyard work and his knees stiff from age, he will still sleep with a dagger under his straw mattress. And when he dreams of marching, of the beat of sandals on stone, of shields glinting in morning light, of Rome rising behind him. The last night on campaign. One final image. A legionary sits beside a fire. His eyes reflect the flames. His shoulders sag, but his hands still polish the gladius by habit. He doesn't speak. He listens to the sounds of men snoring, of boots being mended, of a single flute playing somewhere near the mess tent. The stars overhead are vast, distant, indifferent, but below them stands a man who has carried the weight of empire, who has carved its shape into the edges of the known world. He is just one among many, but without him, Rome is nothing. End of story 3. A day in the life of a Roman legionary. Would you like to proceed to story 4, The Secret Life of a Medieval Monk next? You said, yes. ChatGPT said, great. Let's begin the next immersive story in the Boring History for Sleep series. Story 4, The Secret Life of a Medieval Monk. Section 1, The Bells of Matins. Silence, structure, and sacred routine. Taught 800 words. In the darkness before dawn, the bell tolls. It rings not for the town, not for merchants or peasants, but for a quiet world behind stone walls. A world ruled not by kings or armies, but by time and prayer. Within this monastery, deep in the countryside of 12th century Europe, the first bell of the day calls the monks from sleep. It is matins, the first of 8 daily services, and the beginning of another perfectly structured day in the cloistered life of a medieval monk. The world outside sleeps, but the monks wake, silently, obediently, devoutly. The monastery, a world apart. To understand a monk, one must understand where he lives. The monastery is not just a building. It is a universe enclosed in walls. Inside are all the necessities of life, and all the boundaries. Most monks will never leave once they enter, save perhaps for burial in the surrounding grounds. There is a church, of course, the heart of the monastery, but also a cloister for walking and reflection, a scriptorium for writing, a refectory for meals, a dormitory, a kitchen, a cellar, a garden, and a chapter house for meetings. Some monasteries also have a library, a hospital, and even workshops or mills. Beyond these walls, the monastery owns fields, vineyards, and herds worked by lay brothers or hired laborers. But the monks, the choir monks, live in prayer, discipline, and labor. They do not own anything. They speak little. They obey much. And they begin their day long before the sun. Matins, the first prayer. Matins takes place in the deep night, often around 2 Frihand in the morning. The monks rise from narrow beds in the communal dormitory, dress in simple robes, woolen, heavy, practical, and process silently into the church. Their footsteps echo on stone. No one speaks. In the chill darkness, lit only by candlelight, they chant the psalms in Latin. They bow, rise, kneel, cross themselves in unison. Movements practiced so often they are muscle memory. The Gregorian chant is slow, reverent, meditative. Some are barely awake, some are fully present. All are participating in what they see as a conversation with God, a duty, a gift, and a calling. Matins may last over an hour. When it ends, there is a short break, enough time to rest a little more or reflect in silence. Lauds and the coming of light. Not long after, around dawn, the next service begins. Lauds. The name means praises, and it welcomes the new day. The monks return to the church, now brighter with early sunlight. They chant more psalms, sing hymns, and offer prayers of gratitude for the morning. The rhythm of life here is not driven by personal desire, but by the divine office, the Opus Dei, the work of God. This cycle of daily prayer, known as the Liturgy of the Hours, structures everything. It includes matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline. Every few hours, no matter what else is happening, the bell rings and the monks gather. This structure gives their life meaning. It does not matter if the harvest failed, if a war rages beyond the hills, or if it rains for 7 days. The bell still rings. God is still praised. The cycle is eternal. The rule of Saint Benedict. The monks live by a book, a short book, simple in form but powerful in effect. The rule of Saint Benedict. Written in the 6th century, the rule governs nearly every aspect of monastic life. When to wake, when to pray, how to behave, what to eat, how to deal with conflict, how to welcome guests. It emphasizes obedience, humility, and balance between work, prayer, and study. Monks take vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, not temporarily, but for life. They surrender personal will to the greater good of the community and to the will of God. They give up families, inheritances, ambitions. They take new names. They bury their old lives like the dead. But in return, they gain something else: stillness, purpose, order. In a chaotic world, the monastery offers a haven of certainty. Prime and the day's first labors. After lauds, the monks attend prime, the 3rd prayer service so far, and then begin their daily work. Each monk is assigned a task. Some head to the kitchen, preparing bread and porridge for the day's meals. Others tend to the gardens, growing leeks, onions, herbs, and medicinal plants. The more scholarly monks head to the scriptorium, where they copy texts by hand, Bibles, sermons, philosophy, and classical literature. Those with strong backs help in the fields, assisting the lay brothers. Others care for the sick, read aloud in the refectory, or assist the abbot, the monastery's leader, with administration. There is no idleness. Time is sacred, and to waste it is to offend God. Yet the atmosphere is not frantic. The work is quiet, deliberate, humble. There is grace in simplicity, a meal in silence. Around midday, after the sext service, the monks gather in the refectory for their first substantial meal. They eat in silence. One monk reads aloud from a sacred text while the others dine, not on luxury, but on simplicity. A bowl of pottage, bread, perhaps some vegetables, maybe a bit of cheese or fish. Meat is rarely eaten, except in the infirmary. They sit in assigned places. They chew slowly. There is no gossip, no laughter, just the scrape of bowls and the quiet drone of Latin scripture. When the meal ends, the monks rise, bow, and return to their duties. There is no lingering. There is always more work. There is always another prayer. Nun and the long afternoon. The nun service comes mid-afternoon. It signals a gradual turning inward toward evening, toward contemplation. Afterwards, more work, perhaps time in the library, time in individual study, or time for spiritual reading called Lectio Divina, the divine reading. This is not reading for information, but for transformation. A slow meditative process. A monk might spend an entire hour on a single passage. Others return to their labor. The tools of holiness are not just books, but hoes and hammers and spoons. Even sweeping the floor is an act of worship if done with humility. Vespers. The light grows low. As the sun begins to set, the monks gather once again, this time for Vespers. It is the most beautiful hour. The shadows are long, the candles glow, the singing is softer, more reflective. They give thanks for the day, for its trials and its graces. They ask forgiveness for failures, patience for suffering, strength for tomorrow. This is the hour that sinks deepest into memory, the golden hour of praise. It is not dramatic, but it is full. The day has moved like a wheel, turning steadily from matins to vespers, from dark to light to dark again, and now it begins to close. Compline into the night. After a light evening meal, perhaps a bit of broth and bread, the final service of the day is held, compline. It is short, quiet, gentle. The monks chant the Nunc Dimittis. Now you may dismiss your servant, O Lord, in peace. It is a lullaby to the soul, an invitation to rest, not just in body, but in spirit. They cross themselves, they extinguish candles, they bow, and then they go, in silence to the dormitory. Outside the monastery walls, the world shifts with seasons, wars, and kings. Inside, time flows differently. Days pass not by events, but by bells. There are no headlines, no market chatter, no battlefield news. A monk's calendar is the rhythm of prayer and the demands of duty, and though it appears still almost frozen in time, monastic life is not idle. It is filled with work, with study, and above all, with obedience. Ora et labora, prayer and work. The guiding principle of monastic life, inscribed into the rule of Saint Benedict, is simple but demanding. Ora et labora, pray and work. For the monk, these two acts are not separate. Work is an extension of prayer, a way to serve God through hands, sweat, and effort. He does not choose his tasks. The abbot assigns them according to need and ability. He may be strong and sent to the fields. He may be learned and sent to the library. He may be older and tasked with mentoring novices. He may be quiet and called to tend the sick. He accepts the assignment without complaint, without ambition. His will is not his own. That, too, is a form of devotion. The scriptorium, where words become worship. One of the most sacred and demanding labors in the monastery is the work of the scriptorium. This is no bustling workshop, but a hushed chamber where select monks copy manuscripts by hand, word by word, line by line, in near silence. These scribes are artists and scholars. They dip quills into black ink made of oak gall and iron salts. They write on parchment, sheep or goat skin scraped smooth, and measure every margin with care. They illuminate the pages with red and gold. They draw intricate capital letters, sometimes weaving in vines, beasts, or saints. The most gifted may add small illustrations. A martyrdom here, a vision of heaven there. Every stroke is deliberate. Every word is an act of worship. Errors are corrected, but rarely erased. A single page may take days. A single book may take months, even years. These books are not for profit. They are for preservation of scripture, theology, medicine, astronomy, history. In copying the word, the monk becomes part of its eternal life. Learning and teaching. Not all monks are scribes, but all are expected to study. They read Latin, not fluently, always, but functionally. They memorize psalms, read the writings of early church fathers, and debate theological questions in quiet rooms. Some monasteries operate schools for oblates, boys given to the monastery by their families, or for noble children. Monks teach reading, writing, and religious instruction. Though much of medieval Europe remains illiterate, the monastery is an island of learning. Within these walls, ancient texts survive. Cicero, Aristotle, Pliny, carefully copied and tucked into wooden shelves. Knowledge here is not for prestige, it is for contemplation. And for God, work of the hands, fields, kitchens, workshops. The body, too, must serve. Many monks, especially those of humble origin, spend long hours doing physical labor. They rise early and till the soil, planting wheat, barley, and vegetables. They prune grapevines. They feed livestock, gather eggs, mend fences, and chop wood. They cook porridge and bake bread. They brew ale in great vats. They make cheese, soap, candles, and ink. Some tan hides, others forge tools, some mend robes or cobble sandals. Each task is done without vanity, without reward. There are no names carved into walls, no salaries paid. The only audience is God, and He sees all, even the quiet folding of laundry. To labor in the monastery is to live with purpose, not to climb, but to bow. The infirmary. Healing as devotion. Some monks are trained in herbal medicine and care for the sick. They grow medicinal plants, lavender for calm, mint for digestion, yarrow for wounds. They distill tinctures, grind powders, boil infusions. The infirmary is simple: straw beds, wooden bowls, bandages, and prayer. There are no cures for many illnesses, but the monk offers care with tenderness and silence. He washes fevers, applies poultices, reads aloud from Scripture. To serve the sick is to serve Christ, for in the rule it is written, care of the sick must rank above and before all else. The obedient heart. At the center of all this work, whether with books or barley, is obedience, not just to the abbot, not just to the rule, but to the divine structure of monastic life itself. The monk surrenders personal freedom so that his heart might be free of pride. He obeys without delay, without resistance. He speaks only when appropriate. He listens more than he talks. Even his body shows obedience. Bowed head, lowered eyes, hands folded. This obedience is not weakness, but strength. It is the quiet power of humility, and it is hard-earned. Silence, a discipline of the soul. Most monasteries practice periods of intentional silence. There is no idle chatter in the hallways, no gossip in the gardens. Meals are silent. Many hours of work pass without a single spoken word. This silence is not emptiness. It is full of purpose. In the stillness, the monk listens to the psalms, to the wind, to the beating of his own heart. He listens for the whisper of God. When he speaks, it is with restraint and often reverence. The world outside may be loud, violent, and fast, but within the monastery, stillness reigns. And in that stillness, something sacred grows. Temptation, boredom, and doubt. Despite the peace, not every monk finds serenity. There are moments, many moments of struggle. The temptation to leave, to return to a world of color and music and laughter. The temptation of pride in one's knowledge, one's piety, one's position, the temptation to speak when one should listen, to judge when one should forgive. There is boredom, too, the endless repetition of psalms, the cold meals, the aching back from kneeling or digging, the same faces, the same stone walls, and sometimes doubt whispered in the silence like wind through the cloister. Is God listening? Am I enough? These are not sins, but trials. And like all trials, they must be endured. A monk does not seek perfection, he seeks perseverance. The quiet glory of monastic life. To outsiders, the monastery may seem dull. Colorless robes, hushed voices, dusty corridors. But to the monk who has embraced it, it is a life of profound richness. He sees beauty in small things, the sound of a single bell, the flicker of a candle, the feel of a handwritten page beneath his fingertips. He finds joy not in novelty, but in constancy, peace not in escape, but in surrender. His days are full of meaning, if not excitement. He does not crave recognition. He craves only God. Night falls gently on the monastery. Beyond the walls, the world winds down. Smoke curls from village chimneys. The last carts creak along muddy paths. Wolves begin to howl in distant forests. Inside the cloister, silence deepens. The candles burn low. Robes shuffle quietly along cold stone corridors. Another day ends, not with a roar, but with a whispered amen. Compline, the last prayer. By the time the final bell tolls, the monks have already gathered in the church. It is dark now, and the air is colder. Shadows flicker on the vaulted ceiling as the candles glow like watchful eyes. This is Compline, the last of the day's 8 services, a quiet, contemplative closing of the hours. They sing softly. The chants are not triumphant, but tender. They ask for protection through the night, for forgiveness of errors made, for the strength to wake again in faith. They chant the Nunc Dimittis, Simeon's words from the Gospel of Luke. Now, Lord, you may let your servant go in peace. Some of the older monks murmur this with particular feeling. They are not afraid of death. In fact, they welcome it, not with drama, but with acceptance. Compline ends. The monks bow. The candles are snuffed one by one. The church returns to stillness. Retiring to the dormitory, they move as one, silently, back through the cloisters. Their steps are soft, rehearsed over years. The night is not for conversation. The dormitory is spare, a single long room with low beds, all alike. There are no possessions, no decorations. Each bed has a straw mattress, a woolen blanket, and sometimes a small wooden chest with a psalter or devotional book. The monks undress with modesty, extinguish lamps, and lie down in rows. No prayers are said aloud here. The work of the day is done. Sleep, when it comes, is deep and undisturbed. The rhythm of the monastic day demands rest, not for leisure, but for readiness. Tomorrow will come early. The night watch. Not all monks sleep. One or more are assigned the night watch, either in the church or along the cloister corridors. They tend the eternal candle near the altar, ensure doors are locked, and pray quietly during their vigil. This is a sacred hour, a communion between monk and mystery, alone with darkness and God. Sometimes they walk the cloister garden beneath moonlight, murmuring psalms to the stars. No one sees them. That is part of the point. They are not keeping watch for others. They are keeping watch for the soul. Monastic death. Despite their strict lives and simple diets, monks do not live forever. When a monk becomes ill beyond recovery, he is moved to the infirmary. The brothers take turns sitting beside him. They read scripture. They hold his hand. They keep him company, not with words, but with presence. When he dies, a bell tolls. The community gathers for the office of the dead, chanting the same psalms they've sung all their lives, but now for one of their own. He is washed, dressed in his robe, and laid in the chapel for a vigil. Then he is buried, not in a grand tomb, but in a humble grave within the monastery grounds, among the apple trees, or along the cloister walk. His name is recorded in the monastery's book. His place at meals is left empty for days. The monks pray for his soul during lauds and vespers, and then slowly, rhythm resumes. In monastic life, death is not disruption. It is part of the pattern, memory and the eternal choir. Though the monk is gone, his presence lingers. In the illuminated margins of a manuscript, in the repaired sandals passed on to a novice, in the subtle harmony of a chant perfected through decades of practice. His voice may have faded, but it joins what some call the eternal choir, the unbroken lineage of prayer offered in monasteries since ancient times. The idea is not poetic metaphor, it's real to them. Every prayer sung in a monastery joins the one sung the day before, and the day before that, stretching back centuries. Monks who lived and died in silence are still singing through the lives of those who remain. Their obedience echoes forward. Their humility ripples on. The unchanging world within. Years may pass. Kings rise and fall. Plagues come and go. Borders shift. But within the cloister, little changes. A young boy who entered the monastery at 15 grows gray-haired by 60. He has eaten thousands of silent meals, copied hundreds of pages, sung tens of thousands of psalms. And though he has lived a life most would call uneventful, he feels no lack. He has lived with purpose every day. He has not pursued greatness, but he has pursued goodness. In a world obsessed with noise, he has mastered stillness. Guests and outsiders. Occasionally, a visitor arrives, a nobleman seeking retreat, a priest passing through, a peasant seeking aid. They are welcomed at the guest house, treated with dignity, given food and water, and sometimes spiritual guidance. The monks see them as Christ in disguise, for the rule commands, "Let all guests who arrive be received like Christ." Yet once the guest leaves, the rhythm resumes. Nothing permanent disturbs the flow. Even guests are just passing ripples on a deeper, quiet river. The long obedience, the long obedience. At the heart of the monastic life is a phrase monks often repeat silently, inwardly. A long obedience in the same direction. That is what defines them. They do not seek constant novelty, nor do they expect constant comfort. They expect hardship, repetition, surrender. But in that long obedience, day after day, season after season, something happens. Their hearts soften, their minds quiet, their presence deepens. They become lanterns of stillness in a stormy world, and when they die, they pass that stillness on to the next novice, the next candle, the next prayer. The bell will ring again. At the end of every day, there is a knowing peace. The silence of the night is not emptiness, it is preparation, because before the sun rises, the bell will toll once more. The monks will rise, stretch tired arms, pull woolen robes over their heads, and walk silently into the dark stone church. They will chant the same ancient words. They will bow. They will kneel. They will serve. And in doing so, they will sustain a quiet thread of holiness in a world that so often forgets how to be still. The city breathes smoke. London, in the middle of the 19th century, is a great beast, restless, grimy, and alive with movement. It chokes on coal dust, gaslight, and rain. Its lungs are the factories. Its heartbeat is the rumble of carts and carriages over cobblestone. Its veins are the narrow alleys that twist behind warehouses, taverns, and tenement blocks. It is a city bursting with industry and invention. and a city drowning in poverty. This is the world into which thousands of street children are born or abandoned. Their names are rarely written down. Their stories are often forgotten, but they are everywhere, sleeping in doorways, sweeping chimneys, selling matches, and running messages through soot-streaked streets. This is their London, a world of fog, coal, and hunger. The city grows too fast. By the 1850s, London is the largest city in the world, a sprawling metropolis with over 2 million people. The Industrial Revolution has changed everything. New machines roar in factories, railways cut across the landscape, gas lamps flicker at night, steamships fill the Thames, telegraph wires string above the streets like a spider's web. But as the city grows, it forgets how to care for its weakest. The rich build mansions in Kensington and Belgravia, but in the East End, entire families cram into single rooms. Walls are damp, rats roam freely, children sleep on bare floors or under carts in the street. There are no public schools yet, no child protection laws, no social services. If you are born poor, you stay poor, unless fortune or fate intervenes. Who are the lost children? They go by many names: street Arabs, waifs, urchins, mudlarks, crossing sweepers, or simply the poor. Some are orphans, parents lost to cholera, typhus, or accident. Others are half orphans, sent out to work because one parent cannot earn enough. Some have run away from abuse, some have been abandoned. They may be 5, or 10, or 12. It hardly matters. Childhood in this world ends early. Boys may work as chimney sweeps, crossing sweepers, or factory hands. Girls might sell flowers, sew in sweatshops, or worse, fall into prostitution by the time they're 13. But many are not employed at all. They survive. Day to day, street to street, waking up without a bed. For a street child, there is no warm room, no feather bed, no breakfast waiting. They sleep where they can, under market stalls, in churchyards and stairwells, behind coal carts. In the winter, they huddle near bakeries for warmth or sneak into stable lofts. If they're lucky, they might afford a penny hang, a grim lodging house where a child pays a penny to sleep, slumped over a rope strung across a smoky room, shoulder to shoulder with others. There is no comfort, no safety, only shelter from the cold. In the morning they wake early, because if they don't move, someone will move them. Life on the streets? London is not kind to its youngest citizens. The street is filled with hazards, fast-moving carriages, falling soot, sharp-eyed constables, and cruel older boys who will steal what little you have. To survive, children hustle. Some shine shoes, others sell newspapers, pins, apples, matches, or watercress. Some become mudlarks, wading through the filthy Thames at low tide, looking for nails, bones, or bits of coal to sell. The most daring try their hand at pickpocketing or join small gangs run by older boys or fagin types, adults who use children to steal, beg, or carry messages. The work is exhausting and the pay is poor. But starvation is worse. Coal dust and fog. London's famous pea soup fog is not romantic. It is thick with coal smoke, animal dung, factory fumes, and damp air. On bad days, you cannot see more than a few feet ahead. The gas lamps glow like distant stars. Children vanish into the murk. Many develop coughs that never go away. Their lungs rattle at night. Skin cracks from cold. Hands are always dirty, always reaching for warmth, for food, for coins. No child escapes the grime. It settles into their clothes, their hair, their dreams. The smell of coal becomes the smell of childhood. What they eat or don't. Hunger is a constant companion. Breakfast might be a crust of bread scavenged from a market stall. Lunch could be nothing at all. Dinner, if lucky, might be a potato roasted over a grate, or scraps begged from a tavern cook. Many chew on rope ends or rags to keep their mouths busy. Some drink gin or cheap beer, not for fun, but to kill the pain of cold and hunger. Charities offer soup or bread when they can, but there are far more children than there are bowls. And so, many steal, not out of wickedness, but out of necessity. When it rains, rain is a thief. It soaks paper boys' bundles. It ruins matches and flowers. It muddies boots before they can be shined. It floods the alleys where children sleep. When it rains, the city becomes meaner. The soot turns to sludge. Cold seeps into bones. Work dries up. And still, the children go out, because if they don't eat. The sound of the city. A lost child knows London, not by map, but by sound. The clatter of hooves, the hiss of gas lamps, the bark of dogs, the creak of barges, the bell of St. Paul's, the roar of markets, the rattle of trains overhead. Each sound tells them where they are and how close they are to safety, danger, or opportunity. They move with instinct. They watch people's hands. They read faces. They grow up fast. Too fast. Scraps of kindness. And yet, not every moment is misery. There are scraps of kindness, too. A baker slipping a crust into a small hand. A constable turning a blind eye to a stolen apple. A laundress letting a girl sleep behind her stall for one night. Some children find street families, small, makeshift groups who look out for each other. They share what little they have, a coat, a boiled potato, a warm spot under an awning. In this life, even a smile can be a treasure. There are no easy paths. For a child in Victorian London, life offers few doors, and most of them are closed. What paths do remain are difficult. They twist through alleys of danger, into rooms of hard labor, or deeper into the street itself. Some children enter the workhouse, believing it will offer shelter and food. Others are pulled into gangs, drawn by the promise of protection and quick coin. And many drift in between, navigating a world with no safety net, only the thin thread of luck and cunning. Their voices do not carry far, but if you pause and listen, truly listen, you can hear them beneath the soot and shouting. The workhouse bred rules and fear. The Poor Law Amendment Act of 1834 was designed to discourage dependence on charity. It built one of the grimmest institutions in British history, the workhouse. In theory, workhouses were a solution to poverty, offering lodging, food, and work to those with nothing. In practice, they were prisons for the poor. Children entered alone or with parents, often as a last resort. Upon arrival, they were washed, deloused, and separated. Boys from girls, mothers from children, husbands from wives. The message was clear. Family ties were less important than the system. Life inside was strict. Bell schedules, assigned uniforms, long hours of menial labor, picking oakum, breaking stones, scrubbing laundry. Meals were simple and repetitive. Thin porridge, stale bread, weak gruel. Talking during meals was forbidden. Eye contact with staff discouraged. To leave, one needed permission. But few had anywhere to go. Child labor inside the walls. Workhouses quickly learned that children, even very young ones, could be useful workers. Boys might be sent to textile mills or rope factories, girls to laundries or kitchens. In some institutions, children worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for nothing but a bed and bland food. Punishments were common: caning, isolation, or withdrawal of meals for misbehavior. Education, when offered, was minimal. Reading, writing, and arithmetic enough to work, but never enough to rise. Children who aged out at 14 or 15 were often apprenticed, sent to farms or tradespeople who were expected to feed and clothe them in exchange for labor. Some were treated decently, others became unpaid servants or worse. going into service. For many older girls, the only respectable exit from poverty was to enter domestic service. Becoming a maid, scullery girl, or kitchen helper meant a roof over your head and a steady routine. You scrubbed floors, carried coal, fetched water, polished brass, and rose before dawn. You were expected to be invisible, obedient, and clean. Some girls were mistreated. Others found rare kindness from a cook or housekeeper. Some even learned skills that helped them rise in class. But for every fortunate maid, dozens were discarded for breaking a dish, becoming ill, or growing too tall or slow. They returned to the streets, quieter than before, the gangs of the underworld. Not every child followed the rules. Some found their way into the criminal underworld, not as masterminds, but as disposable tools. Older boys often led small gangs, pickpockets, street thieves, and runners for fences or pimps. They trained younger children how to steal without being noticed, to bump into wealthy men on the strand, slip a hand into a pocket, and vanish before anyone turned. Girls were sometimes lured into brothels or employed as decoys, distracting shopkeepers, while boys stole behind them. The most notorious of these criminals were nicknamed Fagins, after Dickens' villain. They clothed and fed children for a price. The arrangement was simple: steal or sleep hungry. The penny dreadfuls and crime as fantasy. While actual crime was brutal, children also consumed fictional crime in the form of penny dreadfuls. These cheap serialized stories featured highwaymen, haunted houses, daring escapes, and boy heroes who outwitted adults. For a penny, a child could escape into the lives of masked outlaws and clever thieves. It was fantasy, yes, but rooted in the world around them. Some boys imagined themselves as the next Dick Turpin. Some girls dreamed of running away like highway maidens. In reality, of course, crime was neither clever nor glamorous. It ended in beatings, arrests, or worse. But stories gave shape to hope, even if just for a moment. Charities and ragged schools. In the midst of darkness, small lights began to appear. Philanthropists and reformers began creating ragged schools, free institutions for the poorest children, run by volunteers, often in converted stables or basements. These schools offered basic reading, writing, and religious instruction. They also offered warmth, a clean shirt, a cup of soup. For many children, this was their first brush with kindness. Others found refuge in orphan homes, asylums, or mission houses. Places like Dr. Barnardo's homes, where abandoned children were clothed and trained in trades. These were not perfect solutions. Many were stern, some even harsh, but they were better than the street. And for some, they were enough to change a life's direction. Voices from below. Few children left written records. They didn't keep journals or write letters. Their stories were told through police reports, charity registers, or the recollections of reformers. But some did speak in testimonies, trials, or memoirs later in life. They spoke of the cold, the hunger, the scraps of kindness, the nights spent pressed to a bakery wall for heat. They spoke of being invisible, of being watched but never seen, of working hard, so hard for pennies, of watching friends disappear into prisons, ships, or graves. And yet they also spoke of moments of joy: a hand-me-down coat, a teacher who smiled, a loaf of bread shared with a friend under a bridge. Their voices are low, but they endure. The police and the system. The Metropolitan Police, founded in 1829, patrolled the streets in tall hats and long coats. To many children, they were figures of fear, not protection. A constable might haul a child to jail for stealing a loaf of bread, or look the other way if a pickpocket was too fast. Boys could be arrested at 9, girls even younger. Children caught stealing or begging were often sent to prison, hulks, or reformatories. Some were shipped to colonies, Australia or Canada, as juvenile emigrants. The system believed in punishment before understanding, but slowly, as the 19th century wore on, some attitudes began to change. The first glimpses of reform. By the 1870s and 1880s, Victorian society began to accept that children were not just small adults. They were vulnerable, moldable, and in need of care. The Elementary Education Act of 1870 required school attendance for many. The Prevention of Cruelty to Children Act of 1889, sometimes called the First Child Protection Law, acknowledged that abuse and neglect were real problems. It wasn't enough, but it was a beginning. And for the lost children of London, even a beginning was rare. They left little behind. No marble headstones, no portraits, no letters passed down through generations. Most of the lost children of Victorian London disappeared as quietly as they lived, swallowed by the city's fog and soot, their stories known only in fragments. But they shaped the city, nonetheless, in ways small, invisible, and profound. They haunted the conscience of a nation, and their absence made room for mercy to take root. The unmarked graved. In the damp earth of East End churchyards, in the paupers' fields behind workhouses, and even in unclaimed corners along the Thames, lie the bodies of thousands of forgotten children. They died of cold, disease, hunger, violence, or simply of exhaustion. No processions marked their funerals. No names were etched in stone. They were buried in mass graves, often without coffins, wrapped in rags or blankets. The grave registers, where they existed, might simply read, "Male child, unknown, estimated age 7, found in alley." Even in death, they remained nameless, but not meaningless. The survivors who remembered, some of these children survived. A few went on to tell their stories as memoirists, social workers, or activists. Others never spoke of their childhoods, choosing instead to bury them alongside the pain. One such voice was that of Henry Mayhew, a journalist who didn't just write about street children, he listened to them. His interviews captured not just statistics, but the texture of their lives. How a watercress girl earned a penny before dawn. How a crossing sweeper memorized the footfall patterns of the wealthy. How a boy slept in a coal hole and called it home. Through Mayhew and others, their words so often dismissed reached drawing rooms and parliaments. It was not just pity that stirred, it was responsibility, the rise of compassion. By the late 19th century, a slow change had begun to spread across Britain. Philanthropists like Thomas Barnardo opened homes for orphaned or abandoned children. These were not perfect institutions. They had strict rules and religious demands, but they were better than the street. Others founded children's missions, night shelters, and free schools. Church groups provided food and basic clothing. Middle-class women began teaching literacy in slums. Some donated their own shoes to children with none. A few even opened their homes. These efforts were scattered and often overwhelmed. The need was vast, but they marked a shift. Children were no longer seen solely as tiny workers or moral failures. They were seen as humans. London's changing streets. As the century neared its end, London itself began to change. Electric light replaced many gas lamps. New sewage systems reduced deadly epidemics. Slum clearance projects, though controversial, tried to improve housing, and laws began to reflect a growing belief in childhood as something worth protecting. The Factory Acts limited working hours for children. The Education Acts made schooling mandatory. The 1889 Children's Charter gave courts the power to remove abused children from homes. Progress was slow, imperfect, uneven, but the wheels were turning, and they would never fully stop. The ghosts in the brickwork. Today the London of chimney sweeps and match girls is gone. There are no more soot-covered boys slipping between carriages, no ragged girls peddling watercress at sunrise, no barefoot children sleeping beneath market stalls. But their ghosts remain, not to frighten, but to remind. In certain alleyways, if you close your eyes, you might still hear the scratch of a boot, the shuffle of a newspaper boy, the clink of a farthing earned and quickly spent. In schoolyards and shelters and hospitals, the echo of their absence lingers, not as sorrow alone, but as a call to action that still matters. Why their story matters. You might ask, why remember the forgotten? Why tell the story of those who left no legacy, who died in silence? Because memory is a kind of justice. To speak their names, even if we don't know them, is to say they mattered. To tell their stories is to say, you were here, you were seen, you were loved or should have been. Your suffering changed things, even if no one told you so. A pocket full of hope. In a London attic, reserved in a small museum, lies a tattered pocketbook. Inside are scribbled numbers, some crude drawings, and one sentence written by a boy no older than 12. I want to get out, but I don't know where to go. He never wrote his name. We don't know what happened to him, but his words survive. They hold all the longing of a generation of lost children. They hold all the longing of a generation of lost children. They ask us to look closer, to listen harder, to care deeper, and maybe, just maybe, to carry a little of their hope with us into a quieter, kinder world. The master sleeps. The city sleeps. But she is already awake. Before the cockerel crows, before the first rustle of the street, she is moving silent feet across a stone floor, wool tunic clinging to cold skin, hair tied roughly behind her head. She is a slave, one of hundreds in Rome. Not chained, not beaten, not today, but not free either. She has no name of her own anymore, just the one given by her master, Miria. She serves in a domus, a townhouse of a wealthy Roman family, marble floors, painted walls, gods in every corner. To the outside world, this home is elegance. To Miria, it is labor. Invisible, relentless labor. The city awakens slowly. It is the first hour, prima hora, roughly 6 a.m. The sky over Rome is still pale. The Tiber glimmers in sleep. The street outside the domus is quiet, but not for long. Vendors, water carriers, and soldiers will soon fill it with clatter and shouting. Inside the house, only the slaves move. They are the blood of the household, unseen, always flowing. Some clean the impluvium, the central pool where rainwater collects. Others sweep dust from mosaic floors, light the day's first oil lamps, or polish bronze door fittings until they gleam. Miria's task this morning is bread and heat. She carries wood to the kitchen hearth, her arms sore from yesterday's hauling. She grinds grain by hand, a slow muscle-burning task, into meal for the morning bread. She mixes it with water, shapes it, and leaves it for the cook to bake. The master's family will never taste the difference. They expect everything to appear as if by magic. The hierarchy below the masters. Not all slaves are equal. Miria serves inside the house. That gives her more protection and more scrutiny. Outside, field slaves labor on estates from sunrise to dusk, under harsher conditions. Inside, house slaves are split again. Cooks, tutors, hairdressers, stewards. At the top is the villicus, the head household slave, almost a manager. He reports directly to the master and gives orders to the rest. Miria is low in this chain. She is domestic and replaceable. If she spills wine or breaks a dish, the villicus can punish her. If she disobeys, she might be sold. And yet, within this quiet system, a strange stability exists. Everyone knows their place, and some, like Miria, learn how to survive within it, preparing the Master's day. As the sun climbs, the Master's world begins to stir. He will rise soon. He expects his sandals ready, his cloak brushed, his breakfast light but warm. Maria helps another slave girl fill the wash basin in his sleeping quarters. They do not speak, speech is discouraged unless permitted. They arrange his grooming tools: bronze razor, pumice stone, oil flask. The Master's wife may rise later. She has her own maid, her own mirror, her own set of Today a guest is expected for the morning salutation, the formal greeting of clients. The atrium must be spotless, cushions fluffed, incense burned. Miria slips between roles: runner, polisher, water carrier. She makes herself useful. She makes herself small. Small moments of pause. There are moments, only moments, when the work pauses. When Miria carries refuse to the back alley, she looks at the sky. Or when she fetches water from the courtyard cistern, she feels the sun on her skin. She does not own her life, but she owns these seconds. Once, she had a family, a village in Thrace, a mother who sang while weaving, a brother who ran faster than anyone. But that was years ago, before the war, before the sale. Now her memories are stored quietly, like a hidden talisman. The other slaves, in the kitchen, the cook swears at the fire, waving smoke from her face. She is older, loud, and feared, but she has soft spots. In the storeroom, the steward counts amphorae of olive oil and wine, scratching marks onto a wax tablet. A young boy, no older than 10, runs errands barefoot and fast. His tunic is always crooked. He came from Gaul and still struggles with Latin. They are not family. They cannot be friends, not really. But there is a kind of solidarity in shared labor. They share crusts of bread when no one is looking, whisper jokes in corners, warn each other when the Master is in a bad mood. It is dangerous to hope, but even more dangerous to feel completely alone. Bath preparations. Later today, the Master and his sons may go to the public baths, but in the meantime, the family's private balneum must be cleaned and heated. Miria hauls buckets of water from the kitchen cistern. Another slave lights the hypocaust, the underfloor heating system. She adds scented oil to the air, scrubs marble benches with a stiff brush, and places towels on hooks. She does not use these baths. She only prepares them. Still, the warm air is a comfort, better than the drafty corridors and scolding overseers. Noon approaches. By sextahora, the 6th hour, or noon, the household settles into its midday rhythm. Lunch is simpler than dinner, but still elaborate. Olives, fish, honeyed fruits, boiled eggs, flatbread, and cheese. Miria helps plate the meal, carry trays, fetch extra figs when the Master frowns at the selection. The dining room is cool and shaded. Painted walls show mythological scenes: Hercules, Apollo, Venus rising from the sea. She sees these images every day. They are more vivid than her own memories now. A life lived in shadow. Miria does not expect freedom. She has heard of it, a possibility, a legal pathway, but it belongs to others, to scribes, body servants, or the tutors who teach the children Latin and Greek. She knows her path is service until death, unless the Master decides otherwise, unless fortune turns. But she also knows that in this house, this delicate mechanism of marble and silence, everything depends on people like her. The floors are clean because she scrubs them. The meals warm because she grinds the grain. The Master's life runs smoothly because her hands work in the shadows. She is unseen, but essential. There are chains you can see, and there are chains that no one sees at all. Miria wears no shackles. She walks freely through the halls of the domus, speaks when spoken to, sleeps on a blanket, not in a cell. But her life is not her own. Every movement, every breath, is governed by someone else's will. Discipline without warning. In the household, discipline is constant and unpredictable. A dropped amphora, a late return from the market, a tear in the master's tunic. Punishment comes swiftly, not always violently, but always deliberately. A missed meal, a public shaming, a stripe from a rod across the back. For more serious offenses, theft, disobedience, or talking back, punishment can be brutal. Some masters use a flagrum, a short whip with leather thongs. Others sentence slaves to hard labor outside the city, or sell them to work in quarries or mines, a virtual death sentence. Miria has seen friends vanish overnight, never spoken of again. So, she learns to be careful, to be quiet, to sense moods before they shift. Survival is a skill. The master's mood, the master of the house is a senator, not cruel but distant. To him, slaves are part of the household, like lamps or carpets, useful, necessary, but never fully human. He expects obedience, not gratitude. Sometimes he speaks kindly to the steward or nods to the tutor, but never to the lower slaves, never to Miria. His wife is more temperamental. She throws objects when angered. She demands her slippers be warm. Once, she scalded a maid with hot oil for bringing cold water to her bath. In her presence, Miria stands straighter, speaks more softly, avoids eye contact. To displease the mistress is to risk everything, the trust of small things. And yet, even in this strict world, there are small signs of trust. The cook lets Miria carry the salt jar, a precious thing, once restricted to older servants. The steward asks her to accompany him to the market, carrying the coin pouch and record tablet. These are not grand gestures, but they are tiny recognitions. In the rigid social ladder of slavery, even trust in a spice jar is a fragile kind of dignity. Miria handles these tasks with reverence. It's not about the objects, it's about being seen. What happens when slaves are sick? There are no days off, but sickness is inevitable. If a slave grows ill, they are removed from the household, quarantined in the slave quarters, or taken to a cheap physician. Some households provide herbs or remedies, others don't bother. A sick slave who cannot work is a drain. If recovery is unlikely, they may be sold, often to cruel owners, or to those needing bodies for dangerous labor. Miria once helped nurse a boy with fever. She stole cloth for his forehead, shared a pair meant for the mistress. He survived, but was sold the next week. Even compassion comes with a cost. Learning to read in secret. In secret? What in secret? Most slaves are not taught to read. Literacy is power, and power makes slaves dangerous. A literate slave can forge documents, read letters, pass secrets, but some learn anyway. In quiet corners of the kitchen, at night, by dim lamp, from old scrolls left unattended, a kind tutor might teach a house slave to trace letters. A child might repeat Latin phrases aloud during lessons. Miria listens, remembers. She cannot write, but she knows how to read numbers, follow street signs, even recognize names in wax tablets. It is not much, but it is more than nothing. Dreams of manumission. In rare cases, slaves are freed. A master might grant manumission for loyalty, long service, or affection. A freed woman becomes a liberta, a freedman a libertas. They do not become equals, but they gain legal rights. They can own property, earn wages, marry, vote, if male. Freed slaves often stay connected to the household, serving as clients, managers, or craftsmen. Some grow wealthy. Miria knows this dream is distant, But sometimes, when she carries out a difficult task well, or when the mistress praises her neatness, she allows the idea to bloom for a moment. Freedom. Not a life of ease, just a life of choice. The new slave girl. A new girl arrives. Her name is Tula. She is 14, thin, quiet, eyes too wide for her face. She does not speak Latin. She trips over her own feet. She is assigned to sweep the courtyard, but forgets her duties and earns a scolding. Miria helps her. She teaches her the names of the tools, the proper way to fold the towels, the fastest route from the storeroom to the kitchen. They do not speak often. Words are risky, but they exchange looks, small nods, soft smiles. Miria sees her younger self in Tala, and this silent mentorship becomes a kind of rebellion. Rumors of rebellion. Sometimes whispers drift in from the street of slave uprisings, escaped men in the countryside, revolts in Sicily, gladiators breaking free. Miria hears these tales with both fear and wonder. She does not want to die, but part of her longs to see someone push back. The Damas is safe, yes, but safety is not the same as dignity. Still, she knows what happens to rebels. Crucifixion, beatings, public spectacle, so she keeps her thoughts tucked deep inside, hidden like the smooth pebble she carries in her tunic, a gift from her brother before they were separated. An uneventful day is a gift. By mid-afternoon, Maria has refilled the oil lamps, helped prepare the mistress's bath, carried honey cakes to the children's tutor, and scrubbed soot from the family's ceremonial brazier. The work is endless, but the day is quiet. No one shouted, nothing was broken, no punishments were given. She returns to the kitchen and sips broth from a shared cup. The cook scolds her gently, but does not push her away. Outside, the sun is warm on the courtyard stones. A sparrow hops between columns. It is not a joyful day, but it is not a cruel one, and that for Miria is enough. Night does not bring rest, only pause. By the time the master's family reclines for the evening meal, the slaves of the house are still moving quietly, efficiently, endlessly. The city grows darker. Torches flicker in wall sconces. The streets begin to hush, interrupted only by the clop of sandals and the distant call of a fruit vendor lingering too late. Inside the domus, the day isn't over. Not yet. The evening meal, cena. The Roman cena, or evening dinner, is the grandest event of the day. It begins at dusk and may stretch for hours. The family reclines on cushioned couches around a central table. Guests may be present, merchants, clients, other citizens of standing. Wine flows, dishes arrive in a carefully timed order. Miria and other slaves stand just outside the room, still as statues, unless called. She carries trays, stuffed dormice, olives, roasted chicken, honey cakes, sliced melon. She refills goblets with Falernian wine. She listens for the tap of a spoon on ceramic, a signal to approach, never spoken aloud. If she speaks, it must be brief and respectful. If she stumbles, her silence must be deeper still. Listening without hearing. Though she is not a guest, Miria hears everything. Political gossip, complaints about grain shipments, opinions about the emperor, dull laughter, grand boasts, the creaking of couch frames beneath the weight of well-fed citizens. She does not respond, but she learns. Over time, she has become a quiet observer of Roman power, who is rising, who is falling, which words flatter, which offend. These things matter, even to a slave, perhaps especially to a slave. Understanding power is its own kind of armor. Cleaning in the shadow. Once the cena ends, slaves rush to clear the remains. The bones, the fruit peels, the wine-soaked cloths, the platters scraped clean, the floors wiped of oils. The family retires to the garden, or the reading room, or their private chambers. But the slaves continue. They polish silver, they store leftovers in ceramic jars, they extinguish unused lamps, fold draped linens, smooth footprints from mosaic floors. Every trace of living must be erased so the next day can begin fresh. The slave quarters. Only when the household rests can the slaves return to their own quarters, small, windowless rooms behind the kitchen or beside the atrium. Miria sleeps with 2 other girls on straw mats. There is no mattress, no fire, just a blanket and the warmth of exhausted bodies pressed close. Some nights, they speak softly, a memory, a joke, a sigh. Other nights, silence settles like dust. Moria lies awake, tracing cracks in the plaster with her eyes, wondering how many days have passed since she last saw the sky at dawn, really saw it, without a task waiting. Dreams that don't fade. In sleep, memories return. The smell of pine from her homeland, the laughter of her brother as they chased goats, the way her mother's hands moved when she cooked lentils. But sometimes the dreams shift. She is back in the marketplace where she was sold, the auction block, the rough rope on her wrists, the faces that did not look at her, only through her. She wakes with her heart racing, but she is used to this now. Dreams are unreliable companions, kindness in small gestures. Not all nights are lonely. Sometimes, the cook leaves a bit of honeyed fig out by accident. A boy from the stable leaves a flower near the basin. Another slave shares her spare tunic when Miria's tears at the shoulder. These are not grand kindnesses, but in this world, small mercy is everything. They do not talk of freedom. They do not say someday. They simply keep each other warm and carry each other's burdens in silence. When one does not return, one evening, a young girl does not come back from the market. No explanation is given. The mistress frowns when asked. The villicus shrugs. Whispers spread. She was caught stealing a bracelet, or maybe she dropped the wine jar, or perhaps someone else wanted her for their damas. Miria says nothing, but inside her stomach clenches. The girl's mat remains untouched, her cup still on the shelf. In a life where people are traded and discarded like objects, loss becomes routine, but never painless. Festivals and brief joys. There are days of light too. During Saturnalia, even slaves are allowed to feast. The roles reverse for a few hours. Slaves sit at tables, and masters serve them, laughing. It is theatrical, yes, but also deeply cherished. Slaves are given small gifts, candles, coins, sometimes freedom. During public festivals, the domus fills with music. Incense is burned. The mistress dresses in bright silks. The cook prepares dishes only made once a year. Miria dances in the storeroom with the younger slaves. She laughs. She eats too much honeyed bread. For a moment, the chain loosens, not broken, just set down. The fragile thread of hope. Hope is a dangerous thing, but it is also a necessary thing. Miria does not expect to be free. She does not believe in miracles, but she believes in tomorrow, and in the day after that. She believes that if she survives long enough, she may be trusted. If she is trusted, she may one day be given a token, a bronze coin, a letter of release. Or maybe not. But even if freedom never comes, she believes in carrying herself with dignity, in being kind, in remembering the girl she used to be, in believing, quietly, that her life has meaning, even if no one says it aloud. Before the lamps go out, the house is quiet again. Miria checks the door bolts, folds the last towel, and sets down the empty amphora. She blows out a lamp and watches the smoke curl into the rafters. In the courtyard, the moon casts a silver glow across the columns. She breathes deeply, once, twice, then she returns to her mat, wraps her arms around herself, closes her eyes. Tomorrow will come early, but for now, there is silence, and in silence, a kind of peace. He walks in silence, always silence. The gates of the forbidden city rise before him like the face of a god, vast, unblinking, unmoved by time. This city within a city is the beating heart of imperial China, nearly 1,000 buildings surrounded by high red walls and guarded by gold-tiled roofs, watchful lions and the breath of incense that never seems to fade. And within it he moves like a ghost. He is a eunuch, a man who has surrendered everything to serve. He wears no family name, no sword, no lineage. What he has is access, presence, purpose. He does not speak unless spoken to. He does not run, even in urgency. He glides, smooth as silk along polished stone, part servant, part instrument, part shadow. The outer court where power resides. The day begins before sunrise. He lights the incense in the gate of supreme harmony, the grandest outer gate through which ministers and military officials must pass, their hats stiff, their eyes lowered. Here everything is performance. The outer court of the Forbidden City is where ceremonies unfold, audiences, examinations, imperial judgments. It is a place for men of rank, the emperor's ministers, generals, scholars, but none of them live here. Only eunuchs do. While others leave when the sun sets, the eunuchs remain, watching, recording, memorizing every nod, every breath of the dragon throne. The inner court behind the screen. Past the outer court lies the inner court, where no outsider may go without permission. Here, the emperor eats, sleeps, prays, and rules behind layers of velvet and silk. The eunuch's quarters are within this sacred space, modest, spotless, tucked between the hall of mental cultivation and the palace of tranquil longevity. He wakes to the distant chime of the jade bell, tied to the empress's dressing curtain. Another eunuch has just stepped into his slippers to warm them before her feet touch the floor. Everything is choreographed. Every movement echoes with unspoken rules passed down through generations. Becoming a eunuch, he was not born here. Years ago, he was a boy from Hebei, the son of a farmer. Poverty made the choice easy, if not less painful. He was brought to a back room in a city near the capital. The operation was crude. There was blood, fever, silence. He recovered, slowly, and then he was sent to the Forbidden City to serve. Only eunuchs may live and work inside the palace. Only those considered harmless to the purity of the court, especially the imperial harem, the inner sanctum of royal women. To serve here is both an honor and a life sentence. He knows he will never marry, never leave, but he will see what few eyes ever see, serving the Son of Heaven. The Emperor is not just a ruler, he is the Son of Heaven, the bridge between earth and sky. No one speaks directly to him, no one touches him, except eunuchs. Every morning, the eunuch enters the Emperor's bedchamber. Eyes lowered, he prepares his garments, robes of woven gold and crimson. He assists with washing, sets down scrolls, fluffs the pillows, empties the chamber pot. Each gesture must be smooth, each item placed at the exact angle. A misplaced teacup might be seen as disrespect, or worse, a subtle threat. Mistakes are not forgiven. Whispers in silk. The eunuch's duties shift with the emperor's needs. Sometimes he runs messages from one concubine to another, navigating the quiet war of the harem. Sometimes he records the imperial dream. Yes, dreams are written down by court scribes, for even the emperor's sleep is considered sacred intelligence. At other times he delivers commands to ministers waiting in the hall of preserving harmony. or fetches the emperor's favored tea, not too hot, not too bitter. He listens more than he speaks. In this place, information is currency. A single overheard phrase can raise or ruin a man, and eunuchs, though voiceless, hear everything. The hierarchy of shadow. Not all eunuchs are equal. Some clean corridors and scrub chamber pots. Others, like the eunuch in this story, have risen higher. He is a senior attendant, trusted enough to manage scrolls, oversee laundry, even advise younger eunuchs. Above him are grand chamberlains, the emperor's closest aides. A few wield more influence than generals. The most powerful eunuchs are political players, capable of shaping appointments, spying on ministers, even influencing succession. But with power comes danger. Eunuchs who rise too high are often cut down, accused of corruption, exiled, or executed without trial. He has seen it before. He remembers the screams in the courtyard when a favored eunuch fell from grace. So he moves carefully, speaks little, never forgets his place. Between world, he lives in the in-between. Not a commoner, but not a noble. Not a man, but not quite without identity. He sees more than most. He lives in the beating heart of the empire, but he owns nothing. He leaves no legacy. His life is measured in cups served, scrolls unrolled, fans opened, slippers warmed. He does not envy the emperor. He does not hate the ministers. He simply exists. And in existing, he upholds the illusion that the empire is flawless. The sunset bell. As the sun dips below the yellow rooftops, the evening bell rings. In the courtyards, lanterns are lit. The empress returns to her quarters. Children are escorted to the hall of education. The emperor withdraws behind crimson screens. The eunuch tidies scrolls, dims lamps, straightens rugs. Then finally he returns to his quarters, a stone floor, a folded mat, a bowl of millet. He eats in silence. He prays to ancestors he no longer remembers. He wraps himself in thin silk and listens to the wind outside. The forbidden city never truly sleeps, and neither does he. Behind every curtain, a story. Behind every whisper, a strategy. In the forbidden city, even silence is calculated. The walls do not echo. The corridors soften sound. Every step is muted by design, not to offer peace, but to ensure secrecy. This is the domain of the inner court, and no place within it holds more mystery, danger, and complexity than the harem, the living quarters of the emperor's wives and concubines. It is not a place of romance. It is a place of politics. And the eunuch, ever quiet, ever present, walks between its jealousies and ambitions like a candle through paper, carefully, lightly, never too fast. The women of the harem. The emperor may have hundreds of women in his court. Empress, consorts, concubines, and ladies in waiting. Each lives within the inner court, assigned to a palace with a poetic name, Palace of Eternal Spring, Hall of Pure Tranquility, Palace of Gathered Elegance. But elegance is only the surface. Beneath it lies a swirling sea of competition. These women do not control armies or hold court, but they compete in their own way, for affection, for promotion, for influence. To bear the next son of the emperor could elevate a concubine to power. To be ignored could mean a lifetime of loneliness in a gilded cage. And at the center of this web of longing and rivalry stand the eunuchs, trusted, feared, used. The empress and her gaze. The eunuch serves a high-ranking consort, but he reports regularly to the empress, a woman both revered and resented. She commands more than silks and ceremonies. She manages schedules, oversees discipline, and arbitrates disputes within the harem. Her word carries weight, but she must speak softly, for too strong a hand invites suspicion. She rarely smiles, but she sees everything. When she looks at the eunuch, he feels both smaller and more visible. She once asked him without looking up from her embroidery if the consort of fragrant harmony had received more peaches than her share. He lied, of course. Everyone lies, eventually. Games of petals and paper. Intrigue in the inner court comes in subtle forms. One woman accidentally spills ink on another's robe. Another forgets to invite a rival to a tea ceremony. A favorite servant is reassigned. A scroll is moved. A letter goes missing. Each gesture is measured. Every act has layers. The eunuch is often the messenger, the intermediary, the silent witness. He knows what not to say, which words to soften, when to delay a message, when to deliver it with urgency. He has become a master of diplomacy, in whispers, in bows, in the careful tilt of a tray. The emperor's visits. When the emperor visits a woman's quarters, it is a ceremony unto itself. Each evening, his chamberlain presents a list of concubines. The emperor selects one. Her name is written on a slip of jade and placed in a box. The eunuch carries the news to her palace. She prepares quickly, perfumed, powdered, dressed in layers of embroidered silk. Candles are lit, musicians play softly, fruit is arranged in pleasing symmetry. The eunuch returns just before the emperor arrives. He helps adjust pillows, lights the incense, opens the curtain. Then he steps away, always out of sight, but never far. He sees it all. He remembers it all, but he speaks of none of it. Loyalty is a knife. Eunuchs are expected to be loyal to the emperor, to their immediate masters, to the palace system itself. But loyalty is not a straight line. It is a knot. What happens when two mistresses demand conflicting favors? When the empress asks one thing and the grand chamberlain another? The eunuch walks a tightrope, torn between fear, duty, and self-preservation. He tells the truth when it helps him. He lies when it must be done. He serves not out of love, but survival. And still, there are moments of real devotion. The old concubine who once gave him a scarf during a fever, the young empress who cried when her son died, the chamberlain who taught him to read. These memories root him. Not loyalty to power, but to people. Death in the palace. No one dies loudly here. When a concubine falls ill, her pavilion grows quiet. Servants speak more softly. Physicians enter through side doors. If she dies, a eunuch delivers the news. There is no wailing, no loud mourning, just ritual, silence, incense. The eunuch once helped prepare a body, folding her arms, brushing her hair, wrapping her in silk. She had once thrown a comb at him in anger, but in death, she looked peaceful. He wondered, in that moment, if she had felt free. He whispered a prayer. He was not sure to which god. Secrets in scrolls and smoke. The eunuch's other role is one of record-keeping. He transcribes messages on rice paper, seals them with wax, and stores them in scroll cabinets. He helps track movements within the court, who was where, when, and why. Sometimes he burns letters by order or by necessity. He has destroyed declarations of love, confessions of betrayal, pleas for help. These secrets vanish into smoke. He does not mourn them, but sometimes, late at night, when he smells ash, he wonders what truths were lost and how many were his to keep. The tea that tells all. There is a saying in the palace, tea knows everything. Indeed, tea accompanies every moment of the day, in formal court, in private meetings, in the hush of midnight. The eunuch brews dozens of kinds, jasmine, chrysanthemum, fermented pour. Each has a ritual, a time, a mood. He knows who likes which cup, who takes honey, Who pretends to sip but pours it out when no one looks? Once, a concubine fell ill after drinking her tea. The eunuch had not served it, but his name was mentioned. He was interrogated, not tortured, but almost. The true culprit was never found. But for weeks after, every time he lifted a teapot, his hands trembled. A palace within the palace. There is a secret society of eunuchs, informal, unspoken, yet deeply real. They watch out for each other, share bread, pass warnings through glances, cover for each other when sickness or sorrow strikes. They do not call it brotherhood, but it is the closest thing. In a place where everyone serves and no one owns, even a shared joke is an act of rebellion. And in this hidden world, the eunuch finds his only family, the waxing moon. At night, the eunuch steps out briefly, just beyond the edge of the inner court. He stands alone beneath a fig tree. The moon rises between yellow eaves. A faint breeze stirs the silk banners. He closes his eyes. He remembers the river in his village, his mother's hands, the taste of fresh apricots. Then he opens them again. The forbidden city is still there, towering, silent, eternal. And he, its quiet heartbeat, returns to his quarters, unseen. He will never leave. Not because of chains, not because of law, but because this place has become his world, and he has disappeared inside it. The emperor ages. Time is not supposed to touch the son of heaven, but it does. His hair fades from black to silver, his footsteps slow, his voice softens. The morning court sessions become shorter, his appetite changes. He no longer craves music at night. The eunuch sees it all. He adjusts the emperor's cushion more often now. He adds ginger to the tea. He brushes fallen strands of hair from the silk robes without comment. The emperor no longer remembers every name. Sometimes he forgets the season. Once he called the eunuch by the name of one who had died long ago. The eunuch did not correct him. He only bowed, as always. Watching the next generation, the crown prince begins to appear more often in the outer court. He stands taller now, with the same sharp eyebrows as his father. He observes. He speaks softly. He listens more than he speaks, a sign of either wisdom or calculation. The eunuch bows to him too. He delivers messages between prince and emperor. He watches them converse in half sentences, each word packed with expectations. The transition of power has begun, but no one says it out loud. The eunuch remembers the prince as a boy, afraid of lightning, fond of dates. He once cleaned the child's scraped knee. Now that boy may one day command the eunuch's death with a wave of the hand. This is the way of the palace. A life without legacy. Eunuchs cannot marry. They cannot have children. They cannot inherit. They cannot pass on a name. Their legacies are in what they serve, not what they leave. For most, this becomes unbearable. For some, it becomes freedom. The eunuch has come to accept it. He will not be remembered in paintings. His name will not be carved on stone. But he knows which concubine was truly loved. He knows the emperor's favorite dream. He knows where the key is hidden for the garden gate no one uses anymore. He is the keeper of details of the truths behind the ceremonies. That is enough. When the emperor dies, it does not happen suddenly. It never does. There are weeks of rumors, urgent walks through the corridors, whispering behind screens. Then, one morning, the gates to the hall of heavenly purity remain closed longer than usual. The eunuch waits outside. He does not ask questions. Eventually, a younger eunuch steps forward, tears in his eyes, and nods. It is done. The ritual of mourning, the forbidden city transforms in moments. Doors are covered in black silk. Musicians play slow flutes in the courtyard. Ministers gather in their deepest robes. The eunuch leads preparations for the purification of the body. He helps dress the emperor one last time. In robes of state, he adjusts the angle of the dragon seal, the position of the scroll on the pillow. He does not weep. He does not speak. He performs the rituals with reverent perfection. This is the final service, the most sacred one. Life under a new dragon. A new emperor means new arrangements. Eunuchs are reassigned. Alliances shift. Some are exiled. Some promoted. The eunuch is retained but moved to a quieter wing. He is now too old for personal attendance. Instead, he trains younger eunuchs, oversees inventory, catalogs, ceremonial objects. His steps are slower now. His hands tremble when handling scrolls. But his eyes miss nothing. The last garden. Each afternoon, he walks alone in a small walled garden, once the private space of an old empress. It is quiet here. The trees are older than most of the ministers. Carp swim in a tiled pond, red and gold flashing under the lily pads. Sometimes he feeds them rice crumbs. He no longer fears death. He does not pray for freedom. He only prays to remain useful, for as long as the palace needs him. And when it does not, he hopes to vanish with as little fuss as he entered. A letter never sent. Hidden in his chest box is a small scroll. It is written in a simple script. It begins, "To the boy I once was." He wrote it years ago. It speaks of the day he entered the gates, the day he became a eunuch, the quiet pride in learning to serve, the ache of being forgotten, the peace of finally understanding that his life was not small, only unseen. He never sends it. There is no one to send it to. But writing it made him feel real. And that was enough. The final night. One night, the lantern is left burning. He does not wake to extinguish it. His eyes are closed. His hands are folded over his chest. There is no mark of suffering, no sign of struggle. He has simply slipped away, like incense smoke. The next morning, a junior eunuch finds him. They wash his body, dress him in the finest robe he owned, the one he wore on New Year's Day, the one he kept folded with cedar leaves. He is buried quietly. No monument, no statue, only a line in a scroll. He served with distinction. He harmed no one. He forgot nothing. The palace remains. The forbidden city continues. The gates rise, the bells ring, the courtyards fill with new robes, new whispers, new faces. Another eunuch now pours the tea. Another watches the incense burn. Another glides past the gold columns, soft-footed, silent. The old eunuch is gone, but the role continues. And in that way, he is never truly erased. He was the emperor's shadow. He was the stillness between ceremony and command. He was a man without a name, and yet within these walls he saw more than most ever will. Venice floats, not just on water but on trade, ambition, and the dream of knowing what lies beyond the next horizon. It is the year 1493. The Renaissance breathes through its canals like a sea wind, and the city hums with merchants, scholars, sailors, spies, and cartographers. Among them is Lorenzo da Morelli, a man of modest birth but exceptional patience, whose craft is neither loud nor praised in song. He does not sail ships. He does not command armies. But with ink and compass, he is helping reshape the known world, one page at a time, a city built on maps. Venice is a city obsessed with location. Its wealth comes from movement of spices, silk, grain, gold. Galleys cut across the Adriatic and beyond, weaving networks from Alexandria to Bruges. And those who sail need maps, charts of coastlines, depths of harbors, hidden coves, wind currents, routes safe from pirates, islands drawn from rumor, myth, or sailors' tales. To chart the seas is to touch power without stepping aboard. That is Lorenzo's gift, a room above a bookshop. He lives in a modest room above a printmaker's shop near the Rialto Bridge. It smells of paper, salt, and damp ink. Each morning he climbs the narrow stair, unrolls parchment, and sharpens his quill. The tools are simple: a brass compass, a straight edge, ground pigments, ochre, ultramarine, malachite, goose feather pens, a globe in progress. He works in silence, interrupted only by the call of gondoliers below or the bells of San Marco. His table is cluttered but sacred. Here, coastlines form, oceans breathe, empires stretch or collapse with a stroke of ochre. The letters that guide the world. Much of Lorenzo's work depends on letters. From Genoese captains describing coral reefs, from Ottoman traders warning of shifting sandbars, from Portuguese pilots whispering of Atlantic currents. He translates them slowly, carefully. Latin, Greek, Venetian dialects, sometimes broken Arabic. He reads every detail twice. Then he reads between the lines. Some sailors exaggerate, some lie. But if 3 accounts mention the same inlet, he trusts the pattern. Cartography, he says to himself, is the art of learning whom to believe, drawing the edges of the known. The heart of his current project is a mappa mundi, a large wall map of the known world. It is not for display. It is commissioned by a merchant guild eager to know which coasts are growing in trade and which are fading. At its center, the Mediterranean curled and familiar, framed by Italy, North Africa, and the Holy Lands. To the east, the Black Sea, Persia, India. To the west, open speculation. He sketches the Iberian Peninsula, then a vague crescent of Terra Nova, new land, reported by sailors returning from the Western Sea. Some say it's Koipang, others call it the Indies. He does not know what to believe, but he draws it anyway. Faint lines, dotted, uncertain. Mistakes that last generation. A misplaced bay. A reversed current. A myth made real. One error in a map may persist for a century. Lorenzo knows this, and it haunts him. He still remembers the time he misdrew the coast of Crete, based on a single captain's tale. That map was copied 5 times before he could correct it. Now, he double-checks everything. He triangulates, he waits. Sometimes he would rather leave a corner blank than lie with certainty. Here be lions. He once wrote instead of dragons, a quiet joke about the dangers we invent when we cannot see. Voices in the workshop. He is not alone. Downstairs, the printer yells at his apprentices. In the street, a bookseller hawks hand-colored psalters. Across the canal, the scent of roasting chestnuts wafts through the air. Occasionally, a sea captain visits, swearing about reefs off Tripoli, or a monk brings an old chart from a monastery in Rhodes, faded but precious. Sometimes a child peers in through the window, watching Lorenzo ink the curve of a river. No one applauds. But in a city of spectacle, the quiet work of a cartographer is strangely enduring. A letter from Lisbon. One day, a letter arrives. It is sealed in red wax, marked with the insignia of a powerful trading house. Inside, a report: a fleet has returned to Lisbon from a voyage across the Atlantic. They bring tales of a vast land covered in dense forest, no spices, yet, but rivers, strange birds, and a new kind of tree with thick bark and sweet sap. Some believe it's part of Asia. Lorenzo reads the report 5 times. Then, very slowly, he sketches a gentle arc beyond the edge of his current map. No name yet, just the outline. It is not certainty, but it is possibility. Ink-stained fingers and gentle hours. As the sun dips toward the Adriatic, Lorenzo closes his shutters, careful not to smudge the fresh pigments. His hands are always stained black ink on the fingers, red near the nails, a smear of blue from the Gulf of Venice. He eats simply olives, bread, dried figs, drinks wine from a ceramic cup with a cracked rim. At night, he reviews his notes by candlelight, scribbles corrections, measures longitude with makeshift instruments. He dreams not of far-off lands, but of lines that make sense, of coasts that curve as they should, of a world slowly coming into focus. To draw the world is to shape it, not just in parchment and ink, but in policy, war, trade, and power. And now, more than ever, maps mean danger. The map that changed everything. It started with a whisper in the back room of a tavern. A Portuguese vessel, weeks ago returned with cargo from the far side of the Atlantic, wood redder than blood, beasts with never-seen feathers, natives who spoke in bird-like tones. Lorenzo had heard such rumors before, most turned to vapor. But this time, the letter was official. The Crown of Portugal had issued a statement. New lands, possibly part of India, now fall under their divinely appointed domain. Lorenzo stared at the letter and the map fragment attached. Rough, poorly inked but unmistakable, a continent-sized coast, curving westward like a sleeping dragon. He knew two things immediately. The world was larger than they thought, and someone would kill to own the maps that proved it. A visit from the council. That same week, 3 men in red-trimmed robes came to Lorenzo's studio. They wore no armor, but their silence was heavier than iron. The Council of 10, the secretive rulers of Venice's foreign policy and intelligence, had sent them. Their message was simple. No copies of the new Western charts are to leave Venice. Any new maps are to be reviewed. Any leaks are to be punished. Lorenzo bowed. He knew better than to ask questions. The Venetian Republic thrived on control of salt routes, silk routes, sugar flows, and now maps. He had become a keeper of state secrets. In the shadow of monarchs, elsewhere in Europe, kings and queens were sending spies in clerical robes and sailors with photographic memory to rival ports. Maps were now as valuable as spices. A single stolen chart could allow Spain to beat Portugal to a hidden island, or Venice to outbid Genoa for a fleet's return cargo. Lorenzo began locking his doors. He carried his keys on a chain beneath his tunic. He no longer shared wine with sailors. Each line he inked was a bargaining chip between empires. A copy goes missing. One cold morning, he discovered a copy had vanished. A duplicate map of the Azores, marked with updated currents and revised latitude, gone from his drawer. He searched the studio. Nothing. Questioned the printer's apprentices. They swore innocence. The window had been cracked open. Lorenzo said nothing aloud, but inside he felt a sickness bloom. If the council discovered the breach, it would not matter whether he was guilty. The punishment was clear. Exile, or worse. He spent the next week redrawing the Azores from memory, burning old drafts and inventing a fake version, one with subtle errors to plant in case another theft came. In this world, even truth had to be camouflaged. Ink and espionage. He soon learned to write in code. Small dots embedded in wave crests, extra marks in compass roses, faint distortions in the angle of coastlines, all of it intentional. It became a game, a battle of wits, played in pigment. When a Spanish merchant offered him gold for a simple harbor chart, Lorenzo delivered a map with a safe path marked through a reef-laced dead end. The merchant never returned. The sea punishes fools. And Lorenzo, though quiet, was no fool. Messages in margins. Letters continued to arrive, some bearing wax seals, others folded in oilcloth, smuggled in crates of oranges or tucked between pages of holy books. Some came from Lisbon, others from Alexandria. One from a monk in Antwerp claimed a new northwest passage would soon connect the oceans. Lorenzo recorded every credible claim in a black-bound ledger. He called it the Book of Edges. In it were rumors, sightings, lunar measurements, trade winds, and the names of ships that never returned. He did not publish it, but it shaped every map he drew. An unexpected visitor. One evening, long after sunset, a figure appeared in his doorway, cloaked, soft-spoken, speaking in perfect Tuscan. She introduced herself as Isabella, a noblewoman from Florence, interested in the art of chart-making. She knew too much. She named harbors only Portuguese spies would know. She complimented the curvature of his Indian Ocean routes. She asked about the New World, but casually, like one asks about the weather. Lorenzo played dumb. She smiled knowingly. Before she left, she placed a silver ring on his desk. Inside it, folded tight, was a message. Truth is a weapon. Be sure you hold the hilt, not the blade. He never saw her again. When the compass breaks, during one stormy night, Lorenzo dropped his oldest brass compass. The needle cracked, the glass split. It was the first compass his father had given him. Old, clunky, but faithful. He held the pieces in his hand for a long time. The next morning he went to the harbor and walked the docks, something he hadn't done in years. He watched ships being loaded, ropes tightened, sails folded. He spoke to a captain who had returned from the west. The man said simply, "There's more land than water out there." Lorenzo returned home and inked a solid coastline for the new world, no longer dotted or faint, a declaration. The compass was broken, but his conviction was clear. Maps for the next century. By now, his maps were appearing in the private libraries of dukes, merchants, even popes. Few knew his name. His initials LM were often removed before printing, but his curves, his accuracy, his coastal notes unmistakable. Young apprentices came to him now, eager to learn. He taught them the most important lesson. A map is not the world. It is a mirror. The better you polish it, the more truth it reflects. But it can still crack. He watched them ink their first coastlines, steadying their hands when they trembled. He saw in them not successors, but continuations. The map would never be finished. And that was the point. A line of red ochre. Late one winter evening, he added a final detail to his master map, a thin line of red ochre across the Atlantic. It was not a real line. It did not exist in nature. But it divided the world. The Treaty of Tordesillas, signed by Spain and Portugal, splitting the new lands between them. To draw it felt wrong. But he knew, if he didn't draw it, someone else would. He dipped his pen in the red pigment and marked it. Then, for a long moment, he sat in the quiet and looked at the map. So many lines, so much uncertainty, now claimed. He wondered what the world would become, and who would be left off the map entirely. All maps end, some with a border, some with the ocean, some with the words, "Here, nothing more is known." But the map maker, he ends too, not with a storm or war, but with silence. Morning in the studio. Guys, the air smells of dust and lavender. The ink is thick today, reluctant to flow. Lorenzo, now in his late 50s, rubs his wrists, which ache more often. His eyes blur under candlelight, and sometimes he redraws coastlines twice without realizing it. Still, each morning he climbs the stairs to his studio. Each morning he rolls out the parchment, not because someone demands it, not because there's gold waiting, but because he must. To stop would be to float aimlessly, and Lorenzo has always needed direction. The globe that grows. In the corner of his workshop is a large globe, 3 feet across, handmade. It began as a small project, then it consumed years. At first it was meant to reflect the classical world, Ptolemy's ancient outlines. Then new voyages arrived. Letters came, new coasts were spotted, old ones redrawn. Now, parts of the globe are scratched out and re-inked. Others are still blank. He left an entire quadrant near the southern tip of the new continent empty, as a mark of humility. He calls it the world still becoming. Visitors marvel at it. Some ask when it will be finished. He always replies, when the sea decides to stop moving. The apprentice, his young apprentice, Matteo, is 16, eager, restless, and constantly smudging the blue pigments. Lorenzo teaches him without sternness. He shows Matteo how to measure the arc of latitude, using nothing but a string and a sun shadow, how to draw wind roses with 12-pointed symmetry, how to tell when a map is beautiful, not by how much is on it, but how much is left off. They work quietly together, side by side. Sometimes Matteo asks questions. Do you think we'll ever map all the world? Do you believe the Earth is a perfect sphere? What's at the edge of the sky? Lorenzo rarely answers directly. Instead, he hands the boy a compass and says, "Show me what you think." The illness. In the summer of 1506, Lorenzo begins to cough, not a dry cough, but deep and wet. He tires easily. The stairs take longer. The lines of his maps grow less precise. He does not tell anyone, not yet. But Matteo knows. One afternoon, the boy finds Lorenzo asleep at the desk, quill in hand, ink still wet. The candle has burned low. He drapes a wool cloak over him and blows out the flame. That night, Matteo redraws a small corner of a river delta with careful strokes. It is the first time he inks alone. The letter never mailed. Lorenzo writes a letter to his brother in Ravenna, a man he has not spoken to in nearly 20 years. The letter is gentle. It speaks of maps, of Matteo, of the globe. It does not mention illness, only the sense that time is folding in, like a coastline slowly eroding. He never sends it. Instead, he slips it into a pouch of unfinished scrolls, under a folded map of the Spice Islands. He tells himself, if I pass quietly, let someone find it later. Perhaps it will say what I could not in person. The commission refused. A wealthy Venetian noble offers Lorenzo a large sum to create a private world map, one that shows new routes to goldfields in the west, details unavailable to most. Lorenzo declines. It is the first time in his life he turns down a commission. The noble leaves angry, muttering about patriotism and opportunity. But Lorenzo does not regret it. He will not draw a world for one man's vault. Maps are for sailors, for cities, for memory, for everyone. That night, he makes a new title scroll for his globe, dedicated to those who sail into the unknown and return to tell us how it felt. The last coastline. In the final weeks, Lorenzo becomes slower, more quiet. He no longer finishes full maps. Instead, he adds touches, the shape of a river mouth here, a correction in latitude there. One morning, he picks up his quill and draws a tiny island in the Pacific unmarked on most maps. Just a dot. He names it Isola della Speranza, Island of Hope. He does not say why. He hands Matteo the compass afterward and says, "You'll need a steadier hand than mine now." Then he rests. He never draws again. A quiet farewell. On a rainy autumn morning, Lorenzo passes away in his sleep. No crowds gather. There is no public mourning. But the studio fills with soft footsteps. Scholars, sailors, young printers. They lay out his maps. They light candles, They cover the globe in linen. Matteo finds the letter to the brother. He reads it in silence, folds it again, and decides not to mail it. Some words belong to no one but the parchment. The studio lives. Matteo continues the work. The globe remains. The ink pots are refilled. New apprentices come, learning how to use a compass, how to feel their way through the emptiness of parchment. On one corner of the work table, a piece of parchment remains tacked. A nearly complete world map, with the words written in Lorenzo's hand. All maps are invitations, all coastlines promises. The world is unfinished. Let it remain so. Legacy without fame. Lorenzo's name is not etched in marble. He is not credited in royal histories. But his maps endure. They are copied, adjusted, argued over. Some parts are outdated. Others were centuries ahead. One particular chart, the one of the New World's southern coast, influences a Spanish expedition decades later. The captain never knows who drew it. That's fine. Lorenzo's gift was never for recognition. It was for orientation. He gave the world a way to see itself more clearly. The map that never ends. Even now, in quiet libraries and dusty collections, his hand can be seen in the curve of a cape, the shading of a sea, the balance of names. Each map is a mirror, held up to oceans that still move, land still shifting, people still finding their way. The map maker may be gone, but the world, his world, is still becoming.